It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is here, and we've got a very big announcement. We'll also talk about CES, what didn't happen at CES. There's great Xbox news. What's happening to the Duo? Now you can fold it and unfold it. And OpenAI comes to Microsoft Search. We'll see. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. Episode 811, recorded Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. The Angle of the Dangle. Windows Weekly is brought to you by CacheFly. CacheFly is the only CDN built for throughput, delivering rich media content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods and 30% faster than other major CDNs. Learn how you can get your first month free at cachefly.com. Thanks for listening to this show. As an ad-supported network, we are always looking for new partners with products and services that will benefit our qualified audience. Are you ready to grow your business? Reach out to advertise@twit.tv and launch your campaign now. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover all the latest news from Windows, and today a very exciting announcement. We couldn't get rid of Richard Campbell, so we decided to make him a co-host. He kept showing up.
I kept showing up.
We're thrilled. Run as radio host, .NET Rocks host, one of the best-known names, honestly, in Windows podcasting. He brings to us loads of expertise, including, as you learned last week, the experience of running an Exchange server for many years. Insane, though he may be. We're very happy to welcome Richard Campbell to the microphone.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yay.
It's been a lot of fun so far. Let's keep it that way.
Richard said, I have two areas of expertise that you need. One is enterprise, the other is bourbon. And we said, yes, enterprise and alcohol. Those go together.
Enterprise and alcohol.
Perfect. Anybody who runs an Exchange server probably has earned a nip or two. Anyway, so yeah, we're really, really thrilled. I think that's, when Mary Jo left, there was a big gaping hole in our hearts, and now we've filled it with Angel's Envy, and I think that's good.
Right. That's the solution to our heartbreak. Alcohol. Yeah. It's a time-proven method of coping.
Big story this week from Microsoft. Actually, it was really interesting. The Information had a kind of more detailed article. You guys read it of the match in heaven, made in heaven, between OpenAI and Microsoft. Microsoft, one of the early founders, along with Elon Musk and others. And really, I think the idea of OpenAI was, we better beat Google to the punch.
Interesting.
But
I would argue that their statement was actually, we want AI to be done in public, right?
Yes.
There was a lot of AI development that's going on that was kind of secretive, and they're like, hey, everybody should be able to see this. And that was the argument for what OpenAI was. And then the tech giant showed up. So now we can debate whether that's true anymore.
So, Richard, you'll enjoy this. What do you think? Remember when Microsoft was going to rename everything .NET, Windows.NEt, Office.NET?
Oh,
what do you think of like Windows.ai, Office.ai?
Back in the days, remember when blockchain and Bitcoin were all the rage? Mm-hmm. Every company in the world
back in the day. What do you mean, like 6 months ago? What are you talking about?
It's over now.
This wasn't the 1950s.
It's over. But every company wanted to spread a thin layer of blockchain over whatever they were doing.
Yeah, sure. Like a little
butter.
coating of butter.
Yeah. And now
toast.
it's AI, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm using
it's a dumb term. I mean, artificial intelligence is what you call something when it doesn't work. The moment it does work, it gets a new name. It becomes image recognition or voice synthesis.
Oh, that's
right?
a good
natural.
But it's a nice bucket term that is being abused for sure. In fact, it was being abused years ago when Microsoft started saying, remember things like spell checking in Word or grammar checking? Mm-hmm. That's AI now. It's like, no, it is
really
an
old
AI.
term, right? Like Marvin Minsky coins that term in the 1950s to get military funding for his experiments. And I argue the first time the public heard the phrase artificial intelligence, it was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then Hal tried to kill everybody. kind of set up the relationship.
We've been through a number of AI winters because Minsky's promise was as is, by the way, OpenAI's an general artificial intelligence that could do anything like HAL 9000, including locking the pod bay.
By the way, I mean, Asimov solved the problem that later came up in 2001, right? You have the 3 rules of robotics or whatever. No, but
they're
I mean,
tautological. They're not. I don't think
would have solved HAL, is all I'm saying.
Well, okay. Yeah, don't hurt the astronauts. Might have been a good rule to write in.
Just a thought.
Just a thing.
They're on a Jupiter or whatever. Maybe let them, I guess in the book it was Saturn. I think it was Saturn in the book, but whatever.
It was Jupiter.
It has to be the same because he wrote the book while the movie was being made.
I thought they changed the planet between the movie and the book. That could be
wrong. There wasn't any between the movie and the book. That's the whole point. Is like he says, "Well, what are you doing there?" Okay, let me write that down.
I know. Okay, I still have that in my head for some reason.
Yeah,
okay,
no. Anyway, there may be. I don't know. You know what? There are, believe it or not, on the internet, a few pedants who will let us know.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah. The internet.
That's good. I'm happy to hear that because I love being corrected. So,
Richard, make note of that. I just want to say. In fact, I'm sure Mary Jo will lend you the gong if you.
You're saying if I go on the internet, I could have this every day.
Every day you can be corrected.
Oh, well, I'm going to check that out. That sounds fun.
I think we don't talk about it often, but one of the problems, and you will, everybody who does shows with us notes this, but we don't talk about it a lot, is that as soon as you're in the public eye, just raise your head a little bit, prairie dog a little bit out of the cubicle, and there'll be somebody to chop it off.
Oh, yeah, it's like it's like World War I. You don't want to be the first one to stick your helmet up out of the...
The Germans are waiting.
Yeah.
Where were we? Oh, we were talking about AI. So, and actually, AI is an interesting term. You think Marvin Minsky used it in more... not in a technical way, but it was really more a marketing term, Richard?
Well, it was a way to raise money, right?
Yeah.
Which is what when scientists speak publicly because they need money.
Right. This is good.
That's sort of the reality.
I didn't realize.
Every time you see a press release about a technology, it's because they need money.
They want money.
Because if they have money, then they're busy doing stuff and they don't talk.
Well, and this is one of the issues with OpenAI. It is a .org. And even though it's not a nonprofit, they want to go back. They want it to be a 501c3 nonprofit. And so they're essentially telling the investors, Microsoft put $1 billion in. Look, guys.
Yeah, and by the way, when that happened 3 years ago, it was like, well, this will turn into something maybe in the future.
Wasn't a bad bet. So
no, but I mean, it didn't. I don't think it resonated at the time.
Well, if you're that big and you have that much cash, like Apple, like Microsoft, like Google, it's prudent to kind of say, well, we got to make some. It's like you're at a casino. We got to make some bets on what's next because we don't know what's next, and we don't want to miss it.
Their bets on VR and AR didn't pay off, and voice technology.
So we were talking about this yesterday on MacBreak Weekly. It really is apparent now that Apple is putting a lot of its current things like the Mac on back burner to move staff over to AR VR. And I think that's a bad bet. I think Microsoft already has
You know what?
seen
It's
that.
worked out great for Meta. I don't understand where the criticism comes from.
Both Microsoft and Meta are at the other end of that line.
As a Microsoft person, I respect and trust what we're doing. It makes sense. I'm not going to worry about it. I think let them go. It's fun. Yeah. They can do that.
Have fun, Apple. I hope. I hope.
And by the way, while you're at it,
mistake.
make a car. That will be fun too. Yeah. You should make a car.
But that's that same thing. You're throwing spaghetti against the wall, hoping some of it sticks.
Sometimes you make a Newton, and sometimes you make an iPhone.
Right. That's a very good point. So anyway, OpenAI has basically told its investors, look, we're not going to go public. So don't expect a big payday at the end of the road. They've renegotiated, according to the information, their deal with Microsoft to pay them a percentage of profits until they pay off the $1 billion. So now they're looking at making a ChatGPT professional
product. Yeah, that's right.
Professional. And Microsoft's announced that it's going to start using what? Tell me about this. What are they going to do?
Microsoft hasn't announced. That's
this was a rumor,
right? So, this is part of the information article. In other words, they haven't come out and said this. Although, since that article appeared, Panos Panay appeared at an AMD press conference at CS, which we'll get to, and did speak in very general terms about adding AI to Windows. Right. So, I think it's reasonable to, when you hear a rumor, like in fact, it was the Independent as well that reported earlier that Microsoft were going to put Chat GPT capabilities into Bing. to better compete with Google search, et cetera. You kind of hear that and you say, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, whatever that means, whatever, but you could see that. It's not a huge leap to say, okay, there are all these, actually there aren't that many, but there are some AI capabilities across the Microsoft stack, Windows, Office, and elsewhere. So we're going to bring in this OpenAI technology and apply it to those products. Yeah, I mean, it's so logical. You know what's happening. And we've gotten some implicit confirmation. Microsoft has never literally come out and said, hey, this is what we're doing. But, this year, who knows? Build, we always talk about future shows. I mean, Build would be an obvious place, an obvious time for Microsoft to start talking this stuff up a little more strategically and a little more explicitly, right? How they intend to add, AI capabilities across the stack. So we'll see. What I did was go back and look at some of the stuff that they did announce over the past few years since OpenAI and the investment in 2019, and see like what have they done that kind of hints at this future, right? So the stuff, I listed this in the notes, but there's weird little things like Microsoft released a Surface Pro X, which is the first ARM-based Surface product in 2019, which is the first Surface-based product to also feature an NPU, a neural processing unit, that offloads AI tasks from the CPU and GPU and puts them onto the separate silicon, like Apple has been doing in Apple Silicon, et cetera. It's interesting, but it's also in a really niche product that very few people ever bought. And at the time of its announcement, there was nothing that could take advantage of it, right? There was nothing out there. So in 2020, they announced a feature called eye contact. This is that creepy thing. Remember?
Oh, yes. I hated that.
So we're on a call and I'm looking down, but it makes my eyes look like they're looking at the camera. Creepy. But the interesting thing about that is it requires that NPU. So at the time of the announcement, the only product that could run it or offer it was Surface Pro X. In 2021, they had a hybrid work event for Windows 11 and Microsoft 365. And one of the things they announced was, they didn't call it this at the time, but they later came up with the name Windows Studio Effects, which is eye contact, that previous thing, plus voice clarity, voice focus, automatic framing, portrait blur, and background blur.
That demo was very impressive, where they had the long leaf blower behind them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So most PC, I review a lot of laptops. So a lot of PC makers have features like this, not all of them, not always as good, but this notion of like background blur is something we've had for a while. Automatic framing, like this idea that if I shift over here, the webcam will adjust with me, which I've turned off in this camera, but this camera supports that. And various microphone and webcam technologies. Windows Studio Effects sounds really great, but guess what? It requires an NPU, which none of you have, right?
That's unique in Surface.
It's Surface Pro X, not just Surface, but the Qualcomm-based version of Surface, right?
But it's Qualcomm technology?
Microsoft says they built the NPU.
Oh,
so
okay.
Microsoft has a what they call an SQ1, SQ2, whatever processor, which is basically the latest Qualcomm Snapdragon Silicon. I don't know that they do anything to change it, other than in this case they've added the NPU to it. I don't believe it's in die. I think it's a separate chip, but I don't. It doesn't really matter. The Windows Dev Kit, right? Project Volterra last year, this Mac Mini looking thing that developers can buy $500-600, whatever it is, and program on ARM. I've made the argument. I think Richard would probably agree with this. Like, I think one of the weird things that wasn't clear about this thing from day one was, or at the beginning was, wouldn't a developer kind of be better off with like a Surface tablet or something? Because part of the point of ARM is you've got constant connectivity with 5G. You have touch and multi-touch. You have, the tablet form factor. You're swiping and doing all that kind of stuff.
No
and
developer wants to work on a tablet.
No. In other words, you buy one. You're doing all your coding on an Intel box.
Oh, I see.
And you're remoting it. You're remoting into the app on the ARM box.
So you have the tablet sitting next to you, and you're looking at it as an emulator, or not emulator.
But the reason they did this was because it has an NPU, right? That's right. Although, again, you could get the Surface Pro X or whatever. Surface Pro 9 this past year was announced. The 5G version is the next version of Pro X, also has an NPU. But since this time, both Intel and AMD have announced that they're creating NPU silicon, either integrated into their processors. That's going to be the way forward. Or in the case of the 13th gen desktop chips, there's actually going to be an M2 based add-on NPU. So if you have a desktop 13th gen, you're going to be able to add it on late after the fact if you want, or at build time.
Because
that kind of all brings
directly on the bus, so they'll get the same. They'll
get the same.
It's close to not being on the silicon, but being close to it.
Honestly, it's probably a better approach because you can update that thing, and when it's in silicon, we want to get it right before it becomes part of the CPU or whatever, or the SoC.
But you notice all these MPU projects were ARM projects because it's relatively easy to do that. You need Intel's participation if you want to do it inside of an Intel chipset.
Right.
And I hate that we call this stuff AI. These are all machine learning things, right?
Isn't that AI though? Doesn't that qualify as AI? If it's
nominally, it's under the umbrella, but it's an implementation, right?
Yeah, it's almost a lot of times you'll see like AI/ML is how.
So here's let me pitch this to you as my way of distinguishing it. Most coding, you're both coders, is algorithmic. It's a von Neumann machine. It's you do this, and if that happens, then do this. And it's absolutely deterministic.
Sure.
AI, based on knowledge gained by machine learning, makes its own rules, often rules that are obscure or unknown to the humans. And so it's probably still deterministic, but we don't even know what the code is because it's internal in a giant learning database. So that's AI. I mean, it's not HAL 9000 AI. It's,
well, but you're describing like a black box, basically.
It's kind of like a black box, and the information in the black box is garnered by looking at a lot of examples. Or in the case of like AlphaGo, the Go playing machine, playing a billion games against itself and creating a rule set known only to itself.
You're at that point, Leo. It's like normally with programming, I have a set of inputs. I know what outputs I intend. I write the algorithm.
There's a heuristic, and it's created by the human.
Right.
Yeah.
In machine learning, where we use neural nets, which is these adversarially generated networks, we have a set of inputs, we have a set of known outputs, and we train the neural net to generate those correct outputs from the learning model. Right. So you get into this idea of training, and that what it's then quote unquote learned is a set of statistical weights in a neural net that are very hard for us to interpret.
Yeah, it's a machine generated heuristic.
I like that you added air quotes around learned, because I would argue that these machines are in fact sentient.
We use these, and this is probably the reason it's fuzzy language. We use a lot of anthropomorphic terms as if
as we do. We do this to animals. We apply human terms to animals. Of course, we're going to do it to the technology.
That's why I said maybe a rule set would be a better way, or a heuristic that is a heuristic that is generated from massive amounts of examples. That's how ChatGPT works.
Leo, that's like suggesting that spell checking is just about looking up words in a database. It's so much more intelligent than that.
well, I mean, think about this. Spell checking, though, is still a human-generated heuristic. So we have a list of words. We compare the list. We say, I think you mean that.
There is a machine learning model for that, which is that
how close
are all the ways that people. Here are all the ways that people
also
misspell
context,
words imply other misspellings.
Right. Yeah. So there's a part of that. You're right. The heuristic can be, if it's advanced spell checking, using fuzzy matching instead of direct matching.
Yeah. I think all these products that he's listed off, they're all machine learning models.
Right. But I think that's AI. I don't think it's HAL 9000, but it's AI, right?
Well, but the point of this is, I think this is the important point. We're kind of on the cusp. This is happening in a way that quantum computing isn't happening. Remember a couple of years ago, Microsoft talked about quantum computing all of a sudden and then was silent about it for years, right? Like, I think the point is with these MPUs, right, doing to this kind of processing what we do with GPUs for graphics, and now for other things, right? Offloading that from the CPU makes something possible that wasn't possible before at, well, not so much at scale, but just on pedestrian hardware.
Faster, right?
Yeah. Right. And it is allowing something to happen in real time that couldn't have happened in real time before. And that's I think, what puts us over the edge of this kind of interesting new generation.
But turns it into a consumer product.
There is a magic. I hate to use that term. There is a point, a point of, critical learning or whatever. So for instance, I could write a chess playing. Chess is deterministic. I could write a chess playing program that would just do it all.
And they did.
But they're so slow that they can't compete against a grandmaster. Using this means I was able to do a better rule set, and now I can beat any human. That's one thing, but I think the thing Stable Diffusion or DALL-E does with the art images, that's a different.
It has to go way past this. This is right. This is an advanced version of something we've had for a long time, what you just described, right? In other words, to beat a chess master, you as whatever you are, a human being, a machine, whatever, have to know about that guy. You have to know what his weak spot. You don't just know the rules.
No, machines
of the game.
don't. Machines don't.
No, I know, but that's the point. In other words, I think this is where this has to go. Like, it has to, for it to be truly intelligent.
Well, that's just more learning. That's just more rules, generated. A lot of, so it's interesting because there are a lot of chess engines, the very best chess engines, in fact, except for Alpha, are doing exactly that. They ingest real games. Alpha learned by playing itself, by playing a billion games in a very fast way. So it isn't learning from human games, it's learning from its own games. The styles are different, yes. Alpha is probably a better engine, although Stockfish, which is the current best chess engine, learned just from games. It didn't play itself. It doesn't do it that way. That's a GAN, by the way. That's a GAN that Alpha's using, a generative network, as opposed to we got to kind of bring this back to what this means to Microsoft. Well, but I think we got to define the terms. So, Microsoft, by the way, the rumor is going to put $10 billion in. Is that right? Yeah, and the goal is to using that same payback system you mentioned. That at the end, if everything goes well, at the end, Microsoft will own 49% of OpenAI. Oh, interesting. Right? Okay. Yeah. And that's a rumor too, right? To be clear, they've not announced this, but in keeping with what you just said, that is, and it's probably true. And it sounds like it. And their goal is probably more not so much to make money on it, although it's a good way to hedge a bet. I don't think it's maybe about making money directly in Windows, right? Right. That's exactly right. To use it everywhere across the stack. That's what I mean. In other words, we already have Windows and Office and all that stuff. We have the Microsoft Graph. We have Azure, right, where they sell compute and other services, right? So I'd also argue that OpenAI is an arm's length thing. There's going to be some legal issues around these machine learning models. There already are. Very good. So that's right. It's not us. We didn't do it. It's OpenAI. I was the AI. I didn't do it. Yeah. I mean, you checked the box and said it was okay. I just, Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, I don't know about you guys, but many of our other hosts are of the opinion that we are at a watershed moment in AI. That was my point. In other words, in the Microsoft space, thanks to Terry Myerson, we have been talking about this notion of the next wave for years now, right? In other words, Microsoft felt that they missed the next wave when that wave was smartphones, right? They missed it. They lost. They thought for a while that maybe the next wave was voice assistants. They did Cortana first in Windows Phone and then onto the PC, and that didn't go anywhere. And the technologies behind it still exist and still around, and they're used elsewhere. That's fine. There is, I think, a really good case. Sorry. Some people believe AR, VR could be the MR, whatever you want to call it. No, it's not. No, forget it. No, I know. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that there are people who believe that. Right? Yes. And they're wrong. but there is I think that the best possible case to make, it's funny, I was just going to write an article about the next wave. And the thing I was going to write was those other things I just described. Well, not all of them, but AR, VR, MR, et cetera. Voice assistants. I think you wrote the article, or did you have ChatGPT write it in your absence? No, I wrote the article. Okay. If you go to, if you went to CS, one of the things you would have seen is like Google's not talking up Google Assistant anymore. They're talking about Android instead. Like they're kind of shifting the messaging on this stuff. Just like Cortana as a brand has essentially disappeared, but those technologies still exist throughout the stack. They're kind of shifting what the emphasis is when they talk about it. They're not. They have become anymore. These things have become ingredients in existing popular platforms. Yeah. I think AI actually will be similar in that way, right? They're going to add AI to their existing popular platforms. Like that's kind of the point. But I think both of you will appreciate this comparison, which I think I do make in that one article I did put up, which is this has the potential to do. I'm just going to focus on Windows for 1 second. To Windows as we know it today. What NT did back in 1993, or really in 2000, 2001, whatever, which is we have this thing called Windows. It's still called Windows. It looks like Windows. It feels like Windows. It runs Windows apps, but actually under the covers, it's very different from the Windows that we started with. And I think there's
it's interesting. I don't want to call it an ingredient, but I think AI has the power to transform Windows and Office and whatever else, right? I kind of focus on Windows a little bit, the way my brain is, but I think I've been kind of looking at like what could be the next NT in the scheme of things with Windows. Listen, not too long ago, a week, 10 days ago, I was like, the best we can do is add tabs to Notepad. We're not doing anything with the platform. This is terrible. And then this happens, and it's like,
So I use a search engine. I started using a search engine. I'm very interested in it. Created by ex-Googlers called Neva. It's a paid search engine, $5 a month if you want the pro version. There's a free version. But one of the things Neva just turned on is AI in its search results. There was a story that Google was shivering in their boots over all of this, right? That they were afraid they were going to. So just as an example, here's a Google search. How do I choose Firefox as my browser in Windows? And what Google does in its knowledge snippet is it just steals something from support.mozilla.org.
Steal is a strong word.
But let me show you what Neva does. Neva actually has its AI go out and get it from a variety of places to generate a prose thing. And then notice, in order to do attribution, they have footnotes. This one's not really great because it only has 2 sources, but in many of its searches, it'll have multiple sources, which it then uses. It's not using ChatGPT, but a ChatGPT-like AI to synthesize. That's one thing ChatGPT seems to be very good at, is kind of summarizing content. And I actually find this works a little bit better, and it also gets Neva off the hook because they're not just stealing content.
Google has spent the past, I want to say, 5 years negotiating with various locales over what you just showed, which is they're scraping news
snippets
from publishers and just publishing it on their own website.
Yes.
So these guys have all gotten together. They've sued Google, and Google is now, promoting it as something that like they designed. It's like, we have Google for publishers. We're going to give you because we got a class action lawsuit going here.
Let me see what happens. Who's the president of Egypt? Now Google, and this completely, it doesn't even give credit at this point.
Right.
But this is from Wikipedia, right? Let me just see what happens.
It says Wikipedia on the right side.
On the right in this knowledge box.
But there's all these images over there. And
it doesn't say where that came from at all. It definitely came from Wikipedia. Let's try it here. Who is the president of Egypt? This is Neva. And it's a little slow, but and there we go. There's an example of.
So this is AI like constructing the answer as you watch.
using these sources, which is
so basically this is just Google with credit, like it's.
But I think it's also more sources, which is interesting, including planetrulers.com.
That's awesome.
Which I thought was a place where you could buy rulers, but apparently no.
Right.
I think that's kind of interesting. Obviously, this is early days. They just released this a few days ago. But I think that this is what Google's nervous about, is and why Microsoft might be very interested in this. Wouldn't Bing benefit from this kind of thing?
Google, here's a little heads
Bing
up.
Needs something.
Bing needs something.
Microsoft used to focus only on Windows. Apple used to only focus on the iPhone. I'm just going to throw out the little hint. Maybe, just maybe, you should have other products.
Well, and they're trying, but they really haven't done anything to improve search in a long time. I'll circle back on the machine learning.
Is Bing still important to them?
Yeah, I think Bing? It is. They spend a lot of money on it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and they call it out in every earnings. It generates dollars per quarter, Leo. I don't know.
Dollars per quarter is my new measurement.
Single digit dollar. No, it's billions in revenues.
We call it DPQ. Forget
exactly.
ARPU. I got DPQ.
It's actually, most of the money comes through a virtual tip jar. It's
that's pretty much our model.
It's like I worked for a bank one time that was going out of business, and I gave the guy his paycheck in cash, and he handed me back the change, and he said, "Here, you probably need this more than I do."
There's actually
it's like that kind of thing.
There's a great story which we're going to talk about next on Twig about a guy who used the Office Space model of stealing pennies from it for transactions.
Which, by the way, is from Superman 3, by the way.
All right. But he had a folder called Office Space on his computer.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, Richard, you were about to go to loop back on this AI ML thing.
And my concern about the AI term is that you generalize around these things, and it has suddenly you got the HAL implications. When you think in terms of machine learning models, the important part is that training is far more computationally intensive than executing a model. And so suddenly the cloud's a big role in this. One of the reasons Microsoft is all over these technologies is you need Azure, right? This is Azure's ability to render those models quickly for you is an important part of it. Then you can run them on a phone, but you got to make them first. And that takes a lot of compute.
Both Microsoft and Google Amazon have invested heavily in offering what Google calls them TPUs, TPUs, which are basically hardware Microsoft designed around learning.
Just bought a TPU company, didn't they?
Yeah.
Isn't that
so that you as a data scientist or somebody using AI will go, I'm not going to do this locally. I'm going to use Azure to do this. Yeah.
And that's exactly it. It is a best served as a cloud product. And that's what these companies are all desperate for is what do people need the cloud for? As long as the cloud's about saving money, it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
As soon as it's the only place I can run this on the cloud, that has margin.
Let me ask you a question. What is the cloud's benefit? Is it massive storage plus processing power? And couldn't you duplicate that locally?
I'm sorry, in this particular use case, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, why do I need Azure to do these AI models? Couldn't I do this locally?
It's computational.
It's both computational and storage, right?
Yeah. You're right. Those are the two big things. And they can afford to optimize a set of hardware, particularly for the purpose, because they can rent it out multiple times. By the time you're buying enough, how many machine learning models does your organization need to train? Why would you own that stuff?
I mean, people do Bitcoin mining locally, not in the cloud, because they want to keep the cash.
Yeah, because the margins aren't right.
Yeah.
Right? This is about, the amount of money you need to spend to be able to render sophisticated models quickly for the number of times you need to do it. Yeah. It's a utility computing problem. And so
because you don't do it over and over. You do it maybe you'll do it a few times.
Yeah.
But for instance, when I do Stable Diffusion, when I want to generate images of myself and I upload 20 pictures of myself, and I'm going to do that once and use those pictures forever, right? Those AI
if you went back to 2007 and said what you just said, you would be shot as a time traveler.
But it's amazing.
What did you say? When I use Stable Diffusion on my smartphone to make blah blah blah, you're like, people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
but now this is just
together.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But don't you think? I mean, this is very appealing because I look so good. This is very appealing to people. And you're not going to do this again and again on your
the red one makes you look like David Byrne.
I know.
There you go.
I know. I think this is my future profile picture from now on.
There you go.
Yeah, gorgeous.
But that's still a case where you're using a model as opposed to generating a model. Building the model in the first place on the back end is kind of a rarely done thing.
No, because I'm uploading 20 images. I'm creating a new. If you've used Stable Diffusion, use checkpoints. Yes, they have these big checkpoints that you use, but you're also creating a new checkpoint with your images. So you are doing training on those images.
And they best served in the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I'm not going to do this. I did put Stable Diffusion on my computer at home. I have
someday we'll have a Raspberry Pi that does this for us locally, but for now.
Well, that MPU is a big part of it. By the way, if anybody wants any old seasonal pictures of me.
Oh, great.
Amazing.
I've got myself. Now, this is the one I'm not going to use.
I like the Iron Man one.
That's a lot of abs.
Leo in a Speedo is not an
That's
image.
why we asked for separate hotel rooms.
Yeah, exactly. But I loved it for the holidays. I was able to generate all these kind of Father Christmassy.
That's great.
Funny.
I ended up using this as my profile picture. It's a little scary and weird, but that's AI for you. Scary and weird.
You added the axe murderer filter into that one? Is that what
right.
So if I may paraphrase Richard III, you've taken this AI winter and turned it into glorious summer with the advent of cloud?
The cloud certainly facilitated a bunch of things. Now, you go to the guys like Jeff Hinton, who are the AI guys. They're talking about there's another winter coming in the sense that innovation hasn't happened substantially, but that's different for productization. Today, the tech giants have grabbed onto these things and in various incarnations are making product from them. But they're not really inventing new science anymore.
Right. Well,
that's the normal cycle.
I think that
something new comes along, and now you do implementation.
The images, like Leo just showed, the images, the AI painting photos, based on a description, AI writing articles based on some entry level, entry text, is stuff that really shows normal people and it's just exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
people are thrilled by ChatGPT. They cannot stop using it.
I mean, the real world implications, though, look, when Microsoft says, hey, we just improved virtual meetings, everyone's like, oh, geez, for crying out loud, did you give it a rest with virtual meetings?
Who cares?
But
improved.
But they are, but those are still real world advances.
No, and it's funny because people still like, and I try to tell them not to turn that blurry background on, even though it's pretty horrible.
Bad.
We love these new things that computers can do, and we jump on them because they're new. It's exciting.
Well, but new is great, but new and useful is even better.
Well, exactly my point is that we quickly tired of the blur filter. Yeah. So you can't just be novelty. It actually does. But I think ChatGPT is a good example of something that is going to be useful.
Yes. We entered the pandemic with the crappiest communications technology imaginable in our laptops, 720p webcams and front-facing single microphones, And it was interesting to see that change pretty dramatically. But what has it been? It's we're coming in 3 years, right? 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
No. 3 years? Yeah, 3 years. Jesus.
Yeah.
So
3 years.
3 years of terribleness. And now what we have is a solution to a problem we no longer need. But, that's okay, whatever. That we do that all the time.
We also went through several cycles. There was a period where we used various filters and we had animations and so forth, and that
we had the guy with the cat face, doing the meeting that became famous.
We've also seen etiquette evolve. Right?
Yes.
It's like you have your camera on at the beginning and then you turn it off to not be a distraction. Like you turn it on to talk. Like
we also just learned just about being making people weary by having too many and too long meetings,
Yes.
My favorite Microsoft announcement during the pandemic was literally the time they said, we're changing the default meeting time from 60 to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to press on that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've run this machine learning thing to the ground.
Oh no!
Well, except for
the beginning, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, no, it's the one thing I do want to just kind of focus on because we got off of this was what actually was said. Like what has Microsoft said? So Panos Panay, awkward, weird, whatever, shows up with the CEO of AMD, Lisa Su, right?
Yeah,
and a horribly fake impromptu back and forth ensued that was not very well rehearsed, but we will stutter kind of through it. And what basically comes out is that he sort of announces Windows 12.
What?
He doesn't say that, but he talks about the next version of Windows and how it's going to be AI driven. And to me, this is very interesting.
By the way, what does that mean? Does that mean that the programmers are going to be fired and they're going to let ChatGPT write the code? Or,
God, I hope so. No, I think what it means is that Microsoft sees the next generation of deep level improvements to Windows, not like little surface things like changing UI or whatever, but actual kind of core improvements are going to be AI based, meaning they will require, or certainly will be way better, or there will be a subset that won't be available if you don't have an MPU. So we know that MPUs are coming to AMD, which was part of that announcement. They announced their Ryzen 7 7040 series, which is going to be the first chipset to ship with an MPU. Intel has added it to the 13th, one of the little things that was in there that no one really paid a lot of attention to, the 13th gen mobile chipsets. They just announced the CS. MPUs, right? Now, we know that with Windows 11, Microsoft artificially limited the hardware that could be used to upgrade to Windows 11. I don't think they're going to go this strict because it's just too soon, but it's very clear that Windows 12, to get a really good experience, you're going to need an MPU-based PC, which as of this second...
That was the same thing that happened with GPUs, right? I mean, GPUs,
yes. Oh, and
you could run Windows without
it.
Yep. And you scaled resolutions down when
That's
you didn't
exactly
have
right.
one.
Yep.
So you'll have an inferior machine learning experience.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Vista and Aero later, but yes, it's fair to say that one of the things that made Vista tenable was the passage of time and the release of Intel integrated chipsets that could run Aero glass, right? Because in the beginning, there were no computers in the world that could do that.
But PC manufacturers love being able to say "made for Windows 12," right? Like
yes, well, but this makes it a meaning, right?
That's why they did Windows 11, right?
But with Windows 11, it was 100% artificial.
Yeah.
It was
cosmetic.
And that was the thing we questioned again and again.
Yeah.
It was arbitrary. What are you talking about? It didn't make any sense. With Windows 12, actually, they're going to be able to make a very good case. And you're right, PC makers are going to love that because it's going to. Well, I don't know that it will, but it could entice more people to upgrade because you're not going to have these experiences unless you have that kind of computer. Just having filters on a video call is not going to be enough. You know, I mean, I'm sure if you polled people, they would say, "I don't give a crap what I look like. I'm going to use the computer. I'm not spending $2,000. I don't care." But we'll see what else they do. They were very general. Panos Panay did not say anything super specific, other than to say the next version of Windows will be driven by AI.
I'm very annoyed by this because I had, for many years, the Run As site right at the bottom says subscribe or Windows 11 will be just like Vista. And there was no Windows 11, it was Windows 10. And I just updated it to say Windows 12 will be just like Vista. And now I'm going to change the damn thing.
Oh, you're just a cynic. Somebody called the Ask the Tech Guy show, our new version of the old call-in radio show, on Sunday and said, should I upgrade to Windows 11? And I said, you're on Windows 10. He said, no, I'm on Windows 8.1.
Oh, then the answer is yes.
I said, you should at least upgrade to Windows 10. I wouldn't worry about Windows 11 because it's just, a paint job on Windows 10. But he did make the point, well, but isn't Windows 10 going to hit end of life in 2.5
years? Yeah.
Well, 2 years is not that long.
But if he has a computer that's running Windows 8.1, I've got bad news for that guy. He's going to need to get a new computer.
I told him that. I said, you can't run Windows 11.
This is potentially a 10-year-old computer.
Yeah. I said, you don't have an 8th generation or later processor. You don't have TPM 2.0. But I did refer him to your fine show, Hands on Macintosh, that allows people... Hands on Linux. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Hands on Windows, Paul Thurrott. It's a club exclusive, but you did do an episode on how to upgrade to 11, even if you have older hardware. You probably don't recommend that, though.
I don't recommend it, but the type of people who would do that are technical enough
Not
to
this
do it.
guy.
This guy.
Yeah.
Right. So if this guy called and you need a radio show, I would say it's time. You had a good run. Yeah. You probably had 8 or 10 years with this computer. That's a long time.
Believe it or not, a very hard thing to tell people they don't want to spend the money on a new computer because their current computer, even running Windows 8.1, is perfectly adequate. And I kind of don't blame them.
It's also the threat, the complexity of I'm going to be starting over, right? All of the things that I did that made my machine mine.
It's money, but it's also...
no, you're right. You're both right, but
it's working. If I don't throw on a TV set, if I could still watch I Love Lucy on it,
except you want that screen to be curved and 19 inches big. I mean, look, it is real money. It's whatever, but the truth is, this is the exact opposite of upgrading to new iPhone every year. You're not going to really notice too much of a difference. This guy going from what is probably 2012 to 2014 era technology, to a modern PC. My God, it's going to be such a different experience.
Yeah, but he doesn't care.
He doesn't care because he hasn't experienced it yet.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
He's calling you. He must be in this world somehow.
No, he's not in this world.
No? Okay.
He is, I guarantee you, all he's doing is he's writing email to his grandkids. He's browsing the internet looking for deals on trusses. I mean, it's a very...
What, trusses?
I don't know. People don't even use those anymore, do they?
Is that like a truss for a dress or for a truss?
No, I don't know. It's a thing you used to wear if you had a hernia, I guess. I don't know. It's an old school thing. He, like me, is looking for pants that don't hit below too far down on your hips. I want
think
pants.
That's a different kind of show.
Whatever happened to pants that go above your navel?
Yeah.
I want Fred Mertz pants. Do you know what I'm saying?
I sort of know what you're saying. What I'm saying is fashions change. And, maybe it's time to modernize.
Yeah.
How old was this guy? Was he really old?
He was an older fella, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing about what happened with the radio show is that nobody listens to AM radio except people over 80. So all the calls were, older, not that old, but older people. Also probably because I'm an older person. And so they said, oh, well, here's a nice old man who will help me. Help me with my problems. Kindly old man.
Just send him a computer.
Sometimes I am very tempted to go, look, I got got a PC that's 2 years old.
You hear some
too old
sob
for
stories,
me,
right?
But please take it because I'm so
Dear
sad.
God, take this thing, exactly.
But Richard made an excellent point. It's not merely the price; it's also starting over. Not easy.
I don't know where things are.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's using Windows 8.1. That's going to be a bit of a
look. There are people driving cars that were made in the 1990s that work perfectly well.
Yes.
We live in a world where some things really do, and from a hardware perspective, I don't know Windows 8 exactly, but PCs last a lot longer than they used to. The hardware is still viable. It's tough, but
it's really artificial.
The world.
Microsoft says we aren't going to support 8.1. The browsers say we aren't going to support 8.1. So there's this artificial, and people feel like, well, this is commercial. I
agree. But it was also telegraphed in 2012. This thing had a 10-year support life cycle. This was always the plan. It's not like they dropped it out of nowhere. I know most people don't pay attention to that or even know about it. I know this guy didn't look at his end user license agreement, which probably doesn't even say that anyway. I haven't read it either. Right. But
it's not like it bursts into flames at the 10-year mark. It just is.
No, but it could. Support. Maybe they should have done that. But a little. Do you hear a ticking sound? Step away from the computer.
Yeah. So Windows 12 will be written by the way, I went to ChatGPT to try to write Windows 12. And I just thought, well, let's see what it does. And it says, no, I'm too busy doing other stupid things, writing limericks. And
no, we're going to do stuff that people want to see.
Yeah. But what does it mean to say Windows 12?
Well, we don't know. That's the problem is we don't really know what that means exactly. Like Panos Panay, he talked about, he compared it to how the mouse and the scroll wheel came along and made the GUI made sense, to which I kind of raised my hand and the mouse and the scroll wheel appeared in DOS and was sold with Microsoft Word for DOS and made plenty of sense in DeX mode. This guy runs Windows. It's like, okay, but getting past the fact that he has no idea what he's talking about and spoke in very, very vague terms. I think the best thing we can do right now, because he didn't provide any details, is to look at those things I talked about earlier, those Windows, what are they called? The Windows Studio effects, right? And sort of think about, we'd have to sort of invent it because no one said this, but we know how Microsoft has improved this virtual meeting capability, audio and video, using an NPU. Like what might they do across the stack, not just in Windows, but across everything. When you have that kind of processing capability, we were talking about being on the cusp of something new with all of this new capability where they're writing, they're painting, how does this change software? Microsoft has, we talked about this a few weeks ago, GitHub Copilot,
that's actually kind of amazing. I mean,
yeah, but also very, very much like 1.0, right? It's kind of like, what does something like that look like when you apply the power of massive compute capability?
Well, it's going to be, that watershed moment, that Cambrian explosion that we're talking about.
Yeah, and we'll be at the early stages of it. It'll be interesting. It's just certainly nothing certain there as how it's going to go. Now they have to write the things. We're definitely battling the chicken and egg problem. If they don't have the hardware, you can't code to it, and you're not going to have the hardware if you don't have code for it.
That's right. Yep, exactly right.
So they did.
What I just heard was,
go ahead,
Richard Campbell waiting for Windows 13.
They did announce, what is this? I want to say VALL-E.
Yeah, VALL-E.
What is VALL-E?
It's the voice one.
What's that?
This is the voice one.
Right.
What? Tell me.
So you can take, it will listen to 3 words that someone says and then imitate that person.
From 3 words?
I believe so. Yeah, I think that's
what they said. And I thought that was a little interesting and weird. Like
next week's episode, I'm going to be replaced by Polly, and we're going to see how that goes.
But first of all, why limit yourself to 3 words? I mean,
well, I think that's
this is like a juggling trick.
Like that's
watch,
that's how
I can do it with just. I mean,
yeah.
Okay,
but this was the technology that then was extended, and they showed off Julia White in real-time translation, where she was speaking English, and you were hearing a Japanese translation, but as if it was her voice.
But it sounded like her. Yeah, that's
yeah.
okay.
And
So
it
there you
was
go. Actually,
fully in the
that's an
uncanny
amazing
valley.
example.
It was
That's a
very
great
creepy.
example. Right. So in other words, when you hear without any context, we can listen to 3 words of yours and then make text that sounds like you speaking. You're like, okay. But then you say that and you're like, oh, actually, that's very interesting. So in other words, it's not a computer-generated voice speaking in Japanese. It's Julia White's voice speaking in Japanese. That's amazing. Right? That's amazing.
It was creepy, but it was amazing.
But it is amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's a perfect example. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's pause for station identification. And we will return with more of this show brought to you by Fred Mertz Pants, the pants that cover it all. No. Although
holding up waistlines since 1323.
These pants,
we haven't shown a belly button since 1945.
They would go right up. And you know what? I inquired because I got some pants. One of our sponsors, the tailor store, does tailored stuff, and I got some pants from them. And I'm not kidding. They start like at your hip bone instead of at where they should start, up above your navel. And I said, why? And he said, well, besides the styles have changed, the real reason the styles have changed is it's extra material. They save money by not covering your navel. I don't buy. I think this is a mistake. And you know how in old sci-fi movies, they would take old fashions and recycle them, or that people would no longer wear ties. They just have like a little, thing at their neck and that stuff. I think big high water pants.
The bikini suit is imminent.
Oh no, that's the wrong direction. All right, let's talk about our sponsor of the hour, and then we will get back to this fabulous edition, the brand new Windows Weekly featuring Paul Thurrott and Mr. Richard Campbell of Run As Radio. Our show today brought to you by, quite literally, CashFly. Our CDN. The whole world is moving to digital. Oh, there's an insight, right, Leo? Thanks for telling us. But as a result, traffic patterns on the World Wide Web, on the internet, are spiking like crazy. Viewers don't hang around for that video that buffers more than a few seconds. You know that. We're impatient now. Shoppers abandon carts on e-commerce sites that spin. You just leave. There are billions of dollars lost every year in abandoned shopping carts. Gamers, what are they going to do when the latency is high? Oh, they're going to be mad. They're going to leave you some bad reviews. That's why the best companies use CashFly, because expectations are higher. Customers expect a faultless, speedy experience when they're engaging with content. They want it on any device, anywhere, anytime. CashFly has been a leader in content delivery network, CDN, since 2002. They hold the track record for high-performance, ultra-reliable content delivery. They've been doing it for 2 decades. They pioneered the use of TCP Anycast, an innovation other CDNs are just now starting to build upon. CashFly has a metric they call QoE, quality of experience. And it is the single most critical metric when you're serving content simultaneously to a large distributed audience at a global scale. But I say that as somebody who, we have very spiky traffic patterns. When we put out a Windows Weekly, boom, everybody downloads it roughly at the same time because they're all using automated podcast clients. That's why we've been using CashFly for more than a decade. Our delivery stack could be our secret weapon. You may not even think about it or know it, but I could tell you, because you get that content fast without error, it helps us. It helps you. And it can help you, too, in your business. With CashFly, you'll get ultra-low latency video streaming this is very cool. Less than 1 second latency to more than 1 million concurrent users. You get lightning-fast gaming. That doesn't just mean downloads come in faster. They do, but you get 0 lag, 0 glitches, 0 outages when you're playing the game. Mobile content optimization for your website that offers automatic and simple image optimization, which means your site loads faster on any device. They have multiple CDNs for redundancy and failover. They intelligently balance your traffic across multiple providers, so you get the shortest routes, mitigates against performance glitches. Plus, you never have to pay for service overlap again. You'll get flexible month-to-month billing for as long as you need it, discounts for fixed terms once you know what you want. And they worked with us on the spikes, right? The usage, because it was up and down, up and down, up and down. They understand that. You know, they don't bill you for the peak. They bill you for the average. Well, really, you bill you for what you want. You design your own contract when you switch to CashFly. I tell you, we could not be happier. We've never looked, and we get approached almost every week by other CDNs that say, hey, we'd like your business. We say, no, we got CashFly. 3,500 clients, over 80 countries, more than 50 points of presence all over the globe. Organizations like Twit consistently choose CashFly for scalability, reliability, and unrivaled performance. We could not be happier. CashFly, the only CDN built for throughput, delivering rich media content up to 10 times faster than traditional delivery methods, 30% faster than other major CDNs. Learn how you can get your first month free. Cashfly.com. How many times have you heard me say it over the last 10 years? Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com. Thank you, CashFly. Thank you. Cashfly.com. All right, we go back to Richard Campbell and some guy, I think it's Paul Thurrott.
He's the Linux guy.
The Linux guy. Yeah, hands-on Linux host. Oh, no, God, I want
to go to a Linux forum. We just get pushed around by a bunch of bullies for a few minutes.
Neckbeards. I wouldn't do that to you.
Hi, I'm using Zorin OS, and I have a question. How do I make this look exactly like Windows 11?
You know,
hello?
Anybody? It was the radio show was starting to get like that because it was either the old guys who said, well, what do I do? I'm on Windows 8.1, or it was the young bucks saying, you know, like 12-year-olds saying, well, which distro should I use? And it was there was like this big gulf.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm glad I retired from the radio show.
You're kind of a beginning of life, end of life kind of guy.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Well, we all are. I mean, welcome to the club.
Yeah. No, and I feel like this burden lifted off my shoulders. I stopped the radio show at the end of the year. Micah and I do now the Ask the Tech Guys show, and it's so much more fun, and invite you all to listen Sundays from 2 to 5 Eastern, and we stream it live.twit.tv. So of course it's a podcast. If you already get the Tech Guys show, you get it automatically. It's on the same feed. Windows 7. Speaking of the oldsters, and Windows 8.1. I like this. Paul says, are on a farm chasing rabbits.
Yeah.
Aww.
It's interesting that these things are ending support at the same time, given that they were released 3 years apart and both had 10-year support life cycles. But of course, we know that Microsoft extended the support of Windows 7 for 3 years for commercial customers that wanted to pay for that.
Mm-hmm. It was a beloved version, right? Like, there's a reason.
I was going to say that the most fascinating thing about this is that these two products were made by the same leadership, the same team. Mm-hmm. They could not be more different. They could not be more loved or hated from each other. One is still believed to be probably the best version of Windows ever released, and the other one is widely believed, correctly, I think, to be the worst version of Windows ever released.
If you change the name of Windows 7 to Vista SP2, you change the dynamic. But that's what it was.
Thank you. Really? That's exactly right. So Microsoft Sinofsky and his team got way more credit than they deserve for that because, like you said, Windows 7 was a Windows Vista Service Pack, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Going from Vista Service Pack whatever to 7 was not a big stretch. That it took them 3 years should have been telling, by the way, but whatever. I talked earlier about the passage of time. I mean, honestly, the thing that benefited Vista/7 the most was the passage of time. It was the availability of drivers that were not there at launch. It was the Intel integrated chipset that could do the Aeroglass graphics that made this thing truly look beautiful. And that had nothing to do with Microsoft. I mean, of course, Vista was kind of brought to market in a very quick time frame because of all the problems at Longhorn. So
even if it did take 5 years.
Yeah. And so there's a lot that goes on there. But, Steve Ballmer, if you asked him, and people have, what was your biggest regret at Microsoft? Windows 8.
Yeah.
And
which really says because the crisis around the iPad meant he abdicated an awful lot of control of the company to Steven Sinofsky. And it was an overreaction. Yeah, it was an overreaction to what was going on with multi-touch. And
listen, no one knows more about this than Richard, but rather than go forward with the dot-based programming platforms that they had created for Longhorn/Windows Vista, they created a new mobile apps platform based on C++ and COM, which we are still dealing with today.
But I would argue Ballmer underreacted to the iPhone, right? He made fun of the iPhone and it clobbered him. He had to overreact to the iPad.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yep, that's fair. I just think, the problem, it's like the problem with Windows 8 is like a sentence you can't say because there are so many. But, when Windows 8 launched as a touch / what I'll call tablet first system into a world of 1 billion plus traditional PCs that didn't have these capabilities, befuddling everyone. There was no opportunity to go back to the classic UI. First version of Windows ever to dramatically change the UI and not give you that option to go back to Program Explorer or whatever, Program Manager, as you could do in Windows 95, or the old Windows Start menu as you could in Windows XP. It was the first version not to offer that capability because it was Sinofsky's way or the highway.
Yeah, he was so very sure. I would also argue the big thing with Win 8 is that he didn't involve the externals at all. Normally in the version of Windows built, they've got the Boeings and the Columbia Sportswear and so forth involved all along. So they'll be on stage with them at launch day, and there was none of them.
There's also a bigger tragedy here, and this is not a tragedy because of nostalgia. It's not a tragedy because of I just have like this particular preference of the way things might have gone. Microsoft could have and should have created a single mobile apps platform that worked across phone and Windows at that time, and he chose not to work with the Windows Phone team and create something that was like what they were doing on Windows Phone but different. Now they rushed Windows Phone to market, Silverlight. Richard again knows this history better than anybody, but
that was only the second reboot of the phone product. Don't worry, they'll do it again.
And then the third one came with Windows 10 when they finally did UWP, and they did make those things one platform, also HoloLens, Xbox, other products, but it was too late by then. The year that Windows 10 arrived was also the year that Satya Nadella said goodbye to Windows Phone.
And at that point, the phone developers had been beaten to death. I know a lot of those guys, and they took a beating for it.
I wonder how different the world could have been if Sinofsky had gotten off his 3-year train, had worked with phone, and had come out with something a year later, or whatever. He could never have done that because of his, and again, I keep saying this, but Richard knows better than anybody, his abject hatred of .NET, which I find to be insane.
Really? I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
Well, and that's a fallout of Vista, right? I mean, an awful lot of the blame, and not entirely unfairly, but mostly unfairly for the problems
that went wrong, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that went wrong.
They didn't use WPF inside of Microsoft to redo the Office UI or...
No, they could, and they could have done that and made that better. But the bigger thing here is, and I got this from Brian Harry, who was running the project at the time. It was Gates who demanded the .NET be in Windows after XP. Right. And Brian Valentine said point blank when Harry, who at the time ran the CLR team, basically and was on his way out, and he would change roles completely, went to Brian Valentine and said, this is a mistake. Like at 1.1, .NET is not ready for this kind of workload. And Valentine said, Gates wants it. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
And which is the wrong answer. The wrong answer is push back.
This was a team that also put, Internet Explorer into the core of NT, ruining that product previously.
For political reasons.
Right. So similar, maybe, but I think .NET had the long-term legs for that to make sense over time.
Oh yeah, they've done it a little later, but at that time it was the wrong time. And then it became the scapegoat. Now you can have a larger argument about non-determinist programming models like memory garbage collection in operating systems versus deterministic. Like that's another layer of this problem space. And believe me, Windows has a dependency on .NET and has ever since and likely forever will. Yep. But what they were trying to do in the Longhorn timeframe was too much. And the crazy part is they ran out of time. Like that was the
funny you say
part.
that because reflecting on Windows 8 at its 10-year anniversary, Steven Sinofsky summarized the problem by saying it was too much too soon, which in his case is not correct. It was too much of the wrong thing ever, but yes, too much too soon. This is We should have this problem today. We have too little, too late now is the new mantra inside of Windows, right?
But that seems to serve better. Microsoft likes coming in second, it seems.
Well, you know what? For mature platforms that are decades old, actually, too little, too late is exactly the right schedule, honestly.
But I would also argue that tech companies as a whole suck at leading. As long as they're chasing, they do pretty well. The moment they're in the front, stuff goes off the rails for them, and this bugs me so much. It's just too bad because you can look at mobile as as Microsoft / Windows, and you're like, my God, look at this thing! It's taking off. The iPhone, Android, iPad. It's like, what are we going to do? We got to do something about this. They have these capabilities in their platforms because those things are newer that we don't have in Windows. The ability of apps to run lightly on the processor and not kill the battery life, for them to automatically go to sleep when you're not using them. Of course, phones are things where you only have one thing on the screen at a time. You can't have a bunch of overlapping windows and have stuff falling asleep behind the screen. When you can see part of it. I mean, you can't do that, right? But damn the torpedoes, we're going to add this to Windows anyway. But we're not going to bring forward anything. We're going to do it with this new thing, which is in other ways not as capable or sophisticated as the programming models of the past. But how many times have we had this discussion about they're trying to reinvent Windows by hiding all the old stuff and presenting the new stuff, but you could switch it off and everybody does.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, right. Okay. It's all okay. I mean, on that note, it's not like you can go into Windows 11 and turn on the Windows 10 UI, right? You can do small things like move the icons on the taskbar over to the side. You can.
But look at the outcry.
Hold down the shift key and get an old taskbar or a context menu, right? Yeah.
But so they're trying to pick a middle ground between you can always go back and everybody goes back, and you can't go back and nobody will use it. And even then we're still complaining about every time they move. It feels like our cheese has been moved.
We should complain about that unless there was done for a good reason, because people have muscle memory. It's the reason I spent the past year and a half right-clicking the taskbar and wondering why Task Manager wasn't there. Even though I know exactly what happened, right?
Yeah. Now I have to hit the Windows key and pull it up.
Yeah. The other thing that's kind of weird is how Microsoft spent so many years working on this Aero Glass stuff. Shipped it in Vista, shipped it in 7, demoed it in some of the betas or, whatever they used to call those things, community previews, whatever, of Windows 8. And then kind of shifted into a kind of that flat UI that we now see in Windows 10 and Windows 11, right? Which is opaque and doesn't have any form of transparency whatsoever. So they spent the entire 2000s trying to catch up to Apple and Mac OS 10 from a kind of transparency, translucency, hardware accelerated graphics perspective. And then they threw it away.
Well, I would also argue once upon a time the iPhone was all about skeuomorphic, and they got over that too.
That was the world.
Customer chases do evolve.
You know what? I don't think they did get over it. I think Steve Jobs died.
He said, "Finally,
that's one way to get over it."
No more green bays. I love it. Hey,
just the gaming app has to look like a felt table of a pool table.
This just but I don't want to chase our listeners and viewers away from the live show. Bill Gates has just begun his 11th Ask Me Anything on Reddit. So if you've got a question for Bill Gates,
ask him if he's more or less evil than Idi Amin.
Okay. Actually, you know what the first question is? The top of the top lines. What's your views on generative AI? How do you think this will impact the world? And then
was it an Epstein question? That's surprising.
Yeah. Actually, I'm surprised there weren't any answers.
There you go.
No answers. They're all questions so far. I don't see any answers for Bill. So he's probably trying to avoid the Epstein.
The system he's using is the same one the FAA used. So it's going to be a little slow.
By the way,
that looks like
thank God it wasn't like a cyber attack, because I woke up as that was happening in real time and I thought, oh my God, here we go. And then and then it came out it wasn't.
For those who don't know, the FAA has a system that warns pilots in air about upcoming hazards that broke. Right. So they grounded all the flights last night, overnight, until 9 a.m. Eastern this morning, because they didn't want people flying reasonably without that information.
You're not allowed to take off without a current NOTAM. And because nobody could get a NOTAM, nobody can take off.
They say it was not a cyber attack, but
sure.
I mean, I don't think the government has any obligation to reveal like a private industry does.
In other words, we might not find out what. I bet they do come out and say something.
They might. Whether it's real and true, we don't know. I mean, honestly, if it is a cyber attack, I wouldn't announce it.
Of the government these days.
Yeah,
it's like they said it wasn't a cyber attack, but they would say that, wouldn't they?
Are they still running computers that use tubes, or have they?
Yeah, no, they moved up to Commodore 64s, so. I think basically just let them cool off and then they're fine.
I would love to know more about all of this because I do know that the FAA was slow to upgrade their computers.
I'm sure
it's an ideal time for the FAA to, this is an ideal time for the FAA to do this because the chances of a congressional hearing on it are low.
That's a good point. That's a good point. They got other fish to fry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's next?
Well, it's 2023. I had to look that one up. And so the Windows Insider builds have resumed, starting with some dev channel stuff and also some beta channel stuff. So nothing major going on, of course. But
to establish your credentials, Mr. Campbell, are you now or have you ever been a Windows Insider?
I have. I am, I believe. Does it matter? No.
Which ring are you on, sir? Which ring are you on?
I was on the more conservative ring, but have I turned on the machine that's on that ring recently? No, and neither has anybody else.
Yeah, and then when you do, it always says, "Hey, you really got to upgrade because it's been a long time."
I finally got out of the, I was trapped in the Insider program, and I finally got out of it by throwing out that computer and starting over.
Yeah, the one-way dead-end street is what you were on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like I was going to have to. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but if I wanted to get off of it. So I would have had to rebuild Windows at this point.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, because the Windows Insider program doesn't offer you a way out anymore if you're on dev or beta because they don't map to stable builds. And that means the checkbox you say, let me get out when it ships, never does anything because it never ships.
So that's what happened. I got it now. Okay.
This is the...
I can't be the only person with that problem.
No, you are absolutely not. In fact, there could literally be millions of you. Yeah. That's what's alarming about this. Now, they know how many there are. There probably aren't that many, I guess, but there could be.
Well, there isn't. There's one less because I put Linux on that machine.
Oh, jeez. Okay. All right. I almost genuflected there. So,
you mean you almost upchucked?
Adios mio. So
I need a young priest and an old priest. Quick. This Dell XPS was never intended to be running Windows. We have Linux.
It's speaking in tongues. All right. So we just did a big segment on AI and future technologies and everything. And I have to say it's somewhat reassuring to get back to the Windows Insider program and the childish nature of the baloney that they are debating right now. So if you would, Leo, if you could, I don't know if you can show this screenshot that accompanies this article, but it explains
I have the means.
Everything that we need to know about the Insider program, which is this. After a 4-week break, they come back. They have been kind of screwing around with, scroll down to the screenshot that's below there. Yeah, here we go. So as we've talked about this so much, somehow in production, Microsoft shipped what we call the search pill, replacing the search box, the search icon, sorry, that used to be on the Windows 11 taskbar. They never actually have acknowledged or announced that they did this, but they did.
And you can see, by the way, at the bottom of my screen, I have the search
pill.
There
you go. There it is, right?
Yep.
So here's the thing. So Windows 11, the UI is full of rounded rectangles, right? So if you look at the corners of the start menu that you can see in that screenshot, you can see the angle that those rounded corners take.
Yes.
That is throughout the system. The buttons all look like that, all the UI elements. But that start pill that they added, that they still haven't announced, has a completely different shape to it.
It's got more rounded.
Circular sides.
Yes.
So one of the big debates is the search box in the start menu. Should it have the same angle?
Oh, Lord, you have to be so OCD to even notice this.
Well, here's the thing. They created a problem. And the solution to that problem is to make changes elsewhere to accommodate the problem. Here's an idea. How about making the search pill have the same angles as every other freaking UI?
Consistency.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like what you made a thing that looks different from everything else.
This is on the taskbar. Taskbar curves are different than window curves.
So in that window, you can see two versions of curves in two versions of curves in four different places. So you get the curve of the start menu itself.
Yeah.
You get the curve on the all apps button, which is the same.
Yeah.
You get the curve on the folder icons below pinned, right? The second, third, and fourth. And then you have the one that's different, the search box, because that one matches the pill. Because we're stupid, and that's the type of stuff we work on. And I swear to God, what has happened to my world? This is like, okay, here we go. See the search box there?
Yeah.
See how it looks like the rest of the system?
Yeah,
That's
got the right
consistent.
corners. Yeah.
It's only not consistent with the stupid inconsistent thing they added.
I would never know this because look what comes up when I hit the search button.
Well,
30 inexpensive hobbies. Find a hobby you love. Good for your health. Crafting and hobby supplies. Some games from the web. I don't want any of this ever.
Okay, so this is called Search Highlights. We've discussed how we can turn this off. But you know what's interesting? We learned something about today, January 11th. You know what that thing is?
What?
Nothing happened today. Because
there's no news.
Today, that
There's
would have
no
been
news.
the top thing. Right.
Yeah.
On this day in history, nothing happened.
Can I turn it off here in search settings?
Yes.
Is that where I go to turn it off?
That's exactly right. There it is.
Cloud content search. Do I not want
No, wait, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Scroll down.
leave all that stuff on. Search highlights. Turn that off.
Turn it off.
Don't want it. Didn't need it. Don't like it. Now let's see what I get when I hit the little pill. The wrong. Oh, that's what it should be.
Oh, man, it looks like a computer again. My God, it's beautiful.
None of that garbage. Of course, if I accidentally hover my mouse over here, I'm going to get all that crap. So,
yeah, but you know what? Look at the curves on that thing. They're all consistent.
But wait a minute. This is a Windows Aero glass, transparent. But wait.
Oh boy, let's move along. That shouldn't be there. How did that happen?
What the hell?
That's not a
We
thing.
got rid of that in 2012. Oh God, help us all.
Oh,
Consistency.
Yeah.
Love it.
Not so much.
No.
yeah.
Not any good.
Oh, by the way, we have a new term for our weather. Is it a real or aerial? I think it must mean aerial. Aerial flood watch.
Oh,
Or is it a real
flood
flood
that comes from the
watch?
sky.
It's aerial. I don't know. AREAL.
Yeah. It's not aerial, like area or I don't know. What that
Aerial flood? I don't know what that means.
Or is it a typo? Like, is this just area flood
Right.
and somebody stuck in an L that doesn't need to be there?
I don't know.
Why is the water red where you live?
That's when, good question. That's when it's really bad. See all that red part?
Yeah, red's never good, Leo.
That's a gale
Everybody
warning.
knows that.
That's a gale warning, and I don't mean GAIL either. So here comes the gale warning. It looks like it's up your way too, there, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, it's working.
Oh yeah. You got.
I mean, admittedly, all weather ends at Canada, so That,
yeah, look at that. There's a very straight
It is a
line
curiously straight line.
on the border.
No, but look, there's more weather up top where Alaska is.
There seems to be a gap somehow.
Yeah. It's Canadian.
Wow, it
immunity.
must be beautiful in Canada.
It's lovely.
That's puzzling. What is this? This is from
Look at
Microsoft.
the curves on the search boxes on this page. They're
By the
actually
way,
consistent with the new search.
They are using the rounded pill. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. And they use
There's a whole. I remember reading There's a whole CSS code for doing those rounded corners. Just so the angles of it and stuff. It's a circle with a straight lines intersecting and.
As Beavis and Butthead would say, it's the angle of the dangle.
Yes.
It's like it's the.
There's a
technical
second
term.
part to that poem, but I probably
I'm
shouldn't.
just gonna leave it there. That's what I'm gonna do.
Moving right. Wait a minute, I got to close this severe weather alert. It's giving me hives. Moving right along into the programming.
Yeah.
So, any other insider alerts? Gale warning coming?
Well, not insider alerts, but there is we know the Windows subsystem for Android is that subsystem that gives us.
Whatever happened to that?
It's still there. Amazon. In fact, I just wrote that chapter of the book, the Amazon App Store. In fact, I will have a tip about
You're
this.
brave. You're very brave.
Not really, but.
To act as if this is written in stone or something.
Yeah.
In fact, can we characterize Windows 11 as the ever-changing Windows? Like, it doesn't seem to settle.
It does have a certain, we don't know what we're doing, let's throw stuff at the wall and see what happens. Yeah, maybe. I mean, so what's interesting to me, well, okay, here's the technical point about this, right? So there's a Windows feature called Virtual Machine Platform, which is what you need to install the Windows subsystem for Android or the Windows subsystem for Linux. It's obviously a virtual machine platform, as it says. But there are these other virtual machine features in Windows, like Windows Hypervisor Platform, Hyper-V, obviously. These are all actually separate features. They're kind of based on the same technologies. The virtual machine platform is still hypervisor based, but it's what allows us to emulate, in this case, Android and Linux, right? Which are kind of based on the same thing, really, right? So they're kind of both Linux based. It's kind of an interesting thing, but this is like one of the things you need. So anyway, the version of WSA, as we'll call this, Windows Subsystem for Android, that's in Windows 11 today, is based on Android 12, presumably. They have been testing Android 13 in this subsystem in the Windows Subsystem for Android preview program. I think that started about a month ago. And now they are bringing it to all of the Windows Insider Program channels, right? So if you're in the Windows Insider Program, Dev, Beta, or Release Preview, you will get this upgrade. Now, day-to-day life, I mean, you're going to see any changes? I mean, it's not like it's a visual change, but you'll see boot performance changes, clipboard stability changes, application resizing improvements, et cetera. So given the fact that they have just released it to all three Insider Program channels, I would guess that within a month, we're probably going to see it stable. Because they just kind of, again, back in the day, we used to go dev first, beta, release preview, ship it to the world. Now it is, whatever. We don't know what we're going to do. So in this case, they've released it to all three. We're probably all going to get it.
And we're still using Amazon's Kindle store as the...
Oh, Leo, it is amazing. I got to tell you, God, I love it so much. Several reasonable apps. What's funny is, again, in writing the book, if you want to uninstall the Windows subsystem for Android, you can do it in two different ways. You can do it by uninstalling the store or by uninstalling the subsystem. If you want to install the store, it says, hey, hold on a second. If you do this, you're going to delete all these apps you installed. It gives you a chance to kind of say, oh, right, I don't want to do that. But if you want to install the subsystem, it just uninstalls everything. It's kind of another beautiful little inconsistency in Windows that I find to be somewhat hilarious. Anyway, they're testing. They're going to move to Windows. To Android 13. No big deal. But
the numbers are in, and
from one company.
Okay,
one company.
It's been a bad couple of months for the PC industry. Does it continue? Yeah,
I don't know. Did I use the word bloodbath in the notes? No, so I'll use it here. So we kind of knew this was coming, right? When IDC and Gartner put out their final numbers, I do an article in January every year, looking back at the previous year. And so one of the interesting things, and I've done that for several years. So since, off the top of my head, I want to say 2011, PC sales had been on the decline, and then the wonderful pandemic happened, and everything was great. And we had two and a half years of steady gains. It was fantastic. The PC market came back. Amy Hood came out and said, I don't know why we ignored Windows for so long. Our bad. We're going to start pouring more resources into this thing. This thing's going gangbusters. And then this year happened. So unfortunately, I guess everyone who needed a computer bought one, because PC sales have fallen fairly dramatically. So what IDC is saying, and again, this is just the one company, and this is in the quarter, not the year. Do they have that? Yeah, I'm going to have to do
when you say one company, you don't mean one manufacturer, you mean one analyst.
Sorry, I meant one analyst firm. Yeah. So IDC claims that in the fourth quarter, PC sales fell over 28% year over year.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's almost 29%.
It is. Yes. Okay, that's true. It's also almost 30%. I don't know where it's
that's a lot.
Almost 1/3 of or one. That doesn't make sense.
That's a lot.
1/3 of all whatever I'm talking about. Anyway, Lenovo still the number one PC maker.
28% down.
28% down. Yeah. Wow. HP 29% down.
Look
Dell,
who 37%. 37% down.
Yeah. Apple also down, but only 2.1%. And I
think that's because they can't make them.
I was going to say, no, you know what it was? So Macworld wrote about this. Jason Snell, I think, is on one of your shows, right? I think he explained this. Yeah. So Apple had trouble making computers through the summer. They caught up in the last quarter and a half. Right. And that's what you're seeing here. their sales probably would have fallen harder too, but they were finally getting those machines.
Yeah. There was a pent-up demand, as they say.
Yeah,
I do wonder how much of these numbers are part shortages, that they weren't able to deliver as much as they wanted.
Yeah, well,
and drove prices up too.
Yeah. So each of these companies kind of speaks to sales every quarter. And
wait a minute. What's your mug say, Richard?
That's a .NET Rocks mug.
Oh, okay. I thought it said .NET sucks, and I was getting very yeah. Okay, good.
Right.
I guess I could. Yeah.
Mine. I just you didn't ask, but mine says "World's Best Boss," a gift
Nice.
from
A gift,
not from my
from an
employees.
employee.
No, I
Obviously.
bought it myself. Okay. Yeah, not a good year. But yeah, I wonder if it is chip shortages. Although,
well, no,
hasn't that eased up quite a bit?
It has and it hasn't. But it's
and
not
then because
the only
of
reason
zero COVID in China, there were issues.
Yeah, no, this is
manufacturing.
something everyone's. No, the PC makers have talked about this. It's not the demand has fallen off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's just that's a big part of it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Okay,
But the thing IDC is still trying to, promote here, and I get it, but PC sales for 2022 we're still above the pre-pandemic level, right? So
that's
is the thing
important. That's actually important because when you have a big spike because of the pandemic,
right?
Of course, it's going to drop from that. That's an abnormal sales spike. But if it didn't drop below the previous numbers, that's good.
So I think when you have giant spikes up like you did during the pandemic, you have some giant spikes down. And then I suspect what we're going to see is a leveling, but a smaller decline going forward, right? I mean, I'm not saying we're absolutely going back to pre-pandemic levels or lower. That's an open question. Like, where do we land? I don't think Microsoft requiring NPUs for Windows 12, as I don't really think they will, but making that experience better is going to do anything to cause another upward movement there. But we'll see. All we can do is just we'll have to wait and see. So
hope and pray.
It's not over yet.
Hope and pray.
Yeah.
What is the impact of weakening, softening sales? What is that? I mean, obviously to the companies individually, it has an impact, but just in general to the computing, the Windows ecosystem, is it bad?
There are things you can't walk back, right? So one of the things that happened in the PC market is they shot for the bottom with netbooks, right?
Oh, that was
the problem there is you condition consumers to pay less for computing.
That's right.
It's really hard to step back from that.
That's right.
With Windows 11, like we said, Microsoft has tried to kind of artificially limit the life cycle of a piece of hardware. Remember during Windows 10, one of the weird things they said was Windows 10 will be supported for the lifetime of the hardware. Okay. What's the lifetime of the hardware?
Until Windows 10 runs out. That's what.
But during the course of Windows 10, every once in a while they would come up with this thing. They'll say, hey, actually, we're not supporting Windows 10 on some generation of Intel chipsets, whatever it was, previous to Gen 6, I think was one of the things they did. That was kind of a after the fact change that they made. And so the term like the lifetime of the hardware is kind of a moving target. It really kind of depends. And so with Windows 11, they said, here's the line. It's a little different for each chipset, but
8th gen Intel.
8th gen is the one. We typically say 8th gen Intel or equivalent is the easy way to say it, right? And so we know that 8th gen, whatever year that came out, we know that when Windows 11 concludes 10 years or something, whatever it is, like that will be, those things will be ancient history, whatever.
Yeah.
But it feels arbitrary because it was arbitrary, and we're speculating now about NPUs and how that impacts Windows 12. We don't really know for sure, but it's hard when you have, like you talked about the guy on the radio. You have this guy, he's got a 10-year-old computer probably.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do.
Running fine.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't understand why I can't just use this thing. I mean, you can't step back from it. You can't, all you can do is do what you do. And in Microsoft's case, they just stop supporting Windows. But you go into a doctor's office, you go to a subway system, you're still going to see blue screens or Windows 7 screens or whatever.
XP screens.
Yep. I mean, how do you?
I have to say, and I don't think it's related, but for the first time in a long time, there has been somewhat of a leap in technology, particularly the chipsets. I mean, there was a 10-year period where it was just incrementally better every year, but now with the efficiency cores, The challenge from Apple with Apple Silicon, Intel, and by the way, there's a new AMD chip that people are reporting really amazing efficiencies on.
That's right. So somebody just asked me in a Q&A thing last week, I think it was, or if not the week before, what do you think what's the oldest computer you could get your daily job done every day, right? How far back do you think you could go? And coincidentally, I had resuscitated an 8th gen Intel-based Intel NUC, which is basically laptop parts in a little box, And I have to say, it's honestly, it's fine. I mean, my day-to-day work, I have these things I do occasionally.
Most of what we do is not challenging at all.
No. But that said, I will say, I mean, honestly, as someone who reviews, I think this past year I probably had 20 plus laptops come through my house. I actually noticed a performance thing there. The average kind of day-to-day, like, you launch an app and you have to wait an extra second or whatever. I actually did notice it. But
it's a hesitancy.
Right. Yeah, so when you go from 12, it's a little, for most people, probably not a problem. If that's all you use, you'd probably never notice it. But the big difference, I think, between an 8th gen, which remember was the first one, they went 4 cores, right, on the mainstream U series chips. So you got this automatic kind of performance improvement with no battery life deficit, was kind of a nice little boost they did. And today, when you have hybrid chip, like you said, with performance and efficiency cores, is not so much the chipset, assuming everything works fine, right? I've talked about my issues with the 12th gen stuff. It's the other stuff that's going on in Windows and hardware-wise. It's, for example, Microsoft built a capability called Windows Hello into Windows where you can use facial recognition or a fingerprint or just a PIN to sign into Windows, and that's great. But PC makers add things like presence detection where you walk up to the computer, it senses you coming, the screen comes on, and it sees you, and then Windows Hello kicks in automatically, and that sign-in process becomes so much more seamless because of this other hardware innovation that had nothing to do with Microsoft. Same thing when you walk away from the computer. Windows has a capability called Dynamic Lock, which is terrible. It's based on a Bluetooth and a smartphone, and when your smartphone is out of Bluetooth range, which, by the way, is pretty far, your computer can lock. That's useless, but PC makers have presence detection, and if you turn away from the computer, the screen could go off, or if you walk away from the computer, the thing could lock automatically. So that's just like one or two examples of like just a couple of little basic things. But when you add up all of the changes that have occurred in the past 4 or 5 years, I actually think it's not just performance, although that's one part of it. Faster memory, LPDDR5, RAM, faster SSD, faster processor too. But I think it's the whole ecosystem of improvements. And 11th to 12th or 12th to 13th, maybe you don't notice too much, but 8th to 13th, yeah, you're going to notice.
You see a lot more. It says architectural shifts in the motherboards, the way that they address things, and the amount of cache that's available, and the improvements in the CPU to pre-cache and to anticipate data sets and so forth. But they're all fractions of a second. In the end,
but they add up. They add up.
They do add up,
and they give you an overall impression of performance. Even, I mean, like, this is a blunt force way to do it, but 8th gen, I'm sure the sweet spot for RAM was 8 gigs. Today we're starting at 16. Just period. Has Windows gotten humongous? Over 4 or 5 years? Not really, right? But that additional RAM will also give you a little bit of headroom.
I do have 37 Chrome windows open. So.
Yes, there you go. Right, so that will handle that a little bit better.
And then maybe 5G?
Leo, no.
Does that?
No,
well,
so
honestly, 5G now is much more distributed. We're starting to see some 5G in these things, right?
The reason I laughed is the one thing PC makers have been very slow to adopt, which is kind of weird because it's a premium feature. They can charge extra for it. It seems like it's in their wheelhouse. Is cellular connectivity. It's always been the case. I don't know why. You really only see it.
It's appearing now, though, isn't it? More.
It's been around on and off.
Slow. Okay. Did I get more cellular capable laptops to review this year than any other year in the past? Yes. It's a low bar. It's still a small number, and even in the premium space, whether it's prosumer or commercial PCs, it's still. And you still see 4G, by the way. A lot of enterprises want 4G.
Chipsets are cheaper.
Yeah.
The chipsets are cheaper. But here, the problem really is the ISPs. Nobody wants to call a cell company for any reason because their businesses are fundamentally deceptive. You won't get the product you want. It will cost more than you think. It will be impossible to cancel. That's why you don't do. And
most people say, "Look, I can just tether my phone. I'm already paying for it. What's the difference?"
Exactly. I've already been beaten by that company to get this device. Why would I want to be beaten again?
There's a couple things that screw it up. The other problem is you can buy cellular access in Windows through a variety of partners, but what you're buying is not what you're buying with your cell phone. It's kind of a different thing. It's like a data plan that you pay for whether you use it or not, and it's just you start using it and the meter runs and it runs out, and it's like it's kind of a different animal, and it's too bad because Windows has really sophisticated capabilities for switching between networks. So if you have something like you're on Wi-Fi, which you always want to be typically, but the Wi-Fi is really weak in the back of the room where you are, it can use 5G or whatever as well automatically, right? And that stuff works fantastic. And we use
carriers
that on phones.
Make
we don't
it
think
hard.
too much about it.
Yeah.
Carriers make it hard. Carriers ruin
carriers
everything.
make it hard. They really do.
That one kind of bugs me because I feel like that should be great. Yeah. Yep.
Well, and their intent with all of this was to resist Wi-Fi being ubiquitous, and it's failed. Really, Wi-Fi is pretty ubiquitous.
The funny thing about not funny, but the stupid thing about this is true on phones too, is that you are much more secure on a cellular network than you are on a Wi-Fi network, especially if you're out in the world.
Without a doubt.
And this is what should have sold it, especially to enterprises when you have a managed device of whatever kind. You want look, you're only using Wi-Fi unless you're in our building, period, is the way they should manage that. But they look at the cost and it's like,
the one that's kind of to me, and I poke at this every so often, is Microsoft is a telco in the United States. They needed it for the Skype stuff. They needed it for some of the Link stuff and so forth. Why aren't they offering this service as part of your M365 package? Because if I, as the enterprise guy, I could set up these machines where you'll
like a
company
Google
Wi-Fi
thing where they're
whatever that may be, but they could make their own. They have all of the ingredients. I just think they're afraid to fight with the telcos.
I mean, and every big tech company these days is a telco, and that under that term, under that definition, doesn't mean they want to be in that business. Yeah.
Well, I get this. So I don't use Skype a lot anymore, right? The world has kind of moved on, but I still have people are on Skype, so I keep Skype kicking around. And every, I don't know, 6-9 months, whatever, I get an email from Skype say, hey, you have this credit. And you have to use this credit to use. I
love that. When my daughter was in France for a year, studying in high school, that's how we communicated. And
the problem is I don't use it, right? So what it says is if you have to do something to say
every quarter or whatever you have to use it. Yeah.
Every quarter I call myself, listen to the feedback.
One time for 1 second.
It's kind of annoying.
There you go. Done. Yep. Yeah. 1 second. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, from an enterprise perspective, I currently, if I'm responsible for this stuff, I get a bill from a carrier for all the phones I'm providing for my company employees, because putting stuff on my employees' phones sucks. It's cheaper and easier for me to provide a device. So I provide a device. I have total control of the device. I can kill that device at any time, and it's giving you access to your M365 accounts. If that could be part of my M365 account, I would be wildly happier.
It's so in keeping with the Microsoft revenue model, which is charging commercial customers per month for whatever level of E3, F5, what you said, whatever they have. And then you tack on all the add-ons, and this is a logical add-on. This is the communications package.
And a great add-on. An add-on make a huge difference. Locate the device, disable the device, like that. The offboarding process would just include that. I don't have to go to an AT&T interface to deal with any of that. It's dealt with as part of my existing package. Please.
Users would love that, not having to deal with AT&T.
Oh, sure.
I switched to T-Mobile like 4 or 5 months ago, and I get less. I was on Google Fi, so Google Fi on an iPhone, there's no way to block spam calls. It doesn't exist. So I'm like, I can't take this anymore. I switched to T-Mobile. T-Mobile is good, not as good as Google Fi plus Android or plus a Pixel, but
that's because Google Fi is basically T-Mobile plus.
Yep. But I switched to T-Mobile. Now I get less spam. But I started getting these calls from. I got to look this up. It said, let me see if I can just find this. Where is this thing? Sorry, T-Mobile retention. And I'm like, oh my God, maybe someone's like trying to hack it. Like, what is this? I kept ignoring it. And
we never want to lose you as a customer.
Well, that's what it was. After the fourth call, I finally called him back and I said, hey, I've been getting these phone calls from this number. And I said, I'm just worried. Is something wrong with my account? And she laughed and she said, no, we just wanted to make sure you were enjoying being a T-Mobile customer. And I said,
nice.
You know what?
This is
I said, I
Tammy
am,
from
except for
T-Mobile.
these phone calls. Can you stop doing that? She
bothering
goes,
me.
yep, I'll take you off the list. I was like, thank you.
Oh, you got to join Magenta Tuesday or whatever it is and get their special.
No, they were cool about it. They were cool.
Jack in the Box coupons. There's so many benefits to being a T-Mobile subscriber.
I do want that little magenta, like Fiat 500 I could drive around,
That would be a nice reward.
Sure.
I did. I bought I leased a Tesla some years ago, and I must have mentioned a code or something on the air because at some point a big package has arrived at the studio, and it's a little mini battery-powered Tesla Model S that they could drive around the studio. And it said, "Thanks for the referral." I went, "Wow, that was that's nice."
Yeah. Nice.
It's
like when someone buys something at Amazon in your code, you get a couple bucks a month, and you got someone to buy a Tesla. So it's like someone spent $67,000 or whatever.
I think we've given it now to an employee because I can't fit in it.
No.
Yeah.
Send it back.
Holidays were tough on everybody.
I should send it back. Say, hey, do you have a medium? This is too.
Yeah.
I need an XL, please. That's
like
a little
the Microsoft
a little
sweater
small.
I got. It's like, it's cute, but I can't fit this on.
Speaking of telcos, actually, before we get to that, I do want to ask. It's not in your notes, but if there's anything at CES that got you excited, I know neither of you went, but if there's anything, wasn't there like a transparent PC or something? There's nothing. You're shaking your head.
It's plastic. That was a piece of crap.
Nothing.
So there are some. Look, every year PC makers come out with these designs. Like Lenovo has that crazy dual screen design. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. That's pretty fun.
And I assume I'll get that in for review. I'll take a look at it. But I mean, excited? Not really. No. I mean, basically no. Not really.
Lots of VR zones. Microsoft was there, but in the car section, which was interesting.
Wasn't that interesting? Microsoft it's all about mobility.
Well, it's all.
By the way, this is that thing that I was saying where you have to, as a tech giant, continually look ahead down the road.
They're really about infrastructure, right? I mean, in other words, you're not going to have a Microsoft display in your car. You're not going to have Microsoft software running on your car. Well, actually, you could, but.
I bet they'd like
Microsoft's going to be. It's going to be the back end, right? That's where Microsoft.
They do. Do they still do? I mean, they had Microsoft Car for years. They still do that. My old Mustang had that.
It's still out there, but it's morphing again. Hey, we talked about this last show, but clearly the best product at CES was the microphone feedback. Like that was.
I think the avocado ripeness tester was a little more.
Oh, that's good.
Up there.
There was every year there's a bunch of this, but there seemed like even more than usual crap.
Yeah. Well, a higher percentage
that's the technical
of products
term.
that probably won't come to market. I always feel like CES has turned into a place for little companies to go, hope someone latches onto what they show, backs them financially.
Oh, that's what it always was. That's really what it mostly always was. Was
more that, right?
Where you go and you say, we're thinking of making this. If you'd buy some, we will. And then it'll be out in December. And I think people get all excited about stuff they see at CES, neophytes.
Most of which never comes to.
Most of which is never going to happen.
Yeah. No, there was nothing out of CES. CES was such a non-event this year. I mean, obviously I paid attention to that Panos thing at AMD.
That's a big one. Yeah.
AMD comes out and announces new chipsets. PC makers come out and announce new PCs, right? This is what
normal
happens every year.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And not bad either. Like these are all good
No, I don't mean to
things.
say it's bad. It's just not. I feel like we're losing the point here. Like when Apple bailed out of Macworld and said, hey, we kind of want to do this on our own schedule. I feel like these things have their own natural schedules. HP, Lenovo, Dell will release things on their own schedules.
Yeah.
Obviously, when Intel has like a new mobile chipset or AMD does, you want to have partner announcements. So they're there for that. Look, here's some new stuff. But you look at those announcements and this is stuff. Some of it will be in February. Some of it's going to be October. This is not necessarily stuff that's right around the corner.
But it speaks to this idea. I mean, once upon a time, you built your product plans around, we're going to show this at CES, and you pushed hard to deliver. And now it doesn't seem like you do that at all. It's like it'll show up when it shows up.
Bill Gates and then Steve Ballmer used to keynote CES.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember those days? And Microsoft, I mentioned this last time, had the best carpet in their booth.
Okay. Well,
That's all I remember, to be honest with
all
you.
right.
Important, yeah.
Well, the Gates bit in particular I thought was very interesting because it was a chance, because again, founder, he is who he is. He would talk about the future, often in semi-vague terms. They would show off like, here's the new media center thing, here's the new whatever thing. But a lot of his talk, in many ways, the reason you would show up is because here's this tech seer opining about the future. It was interesting.
Sure. But
Instead, he's
the money
using a
they
Reddit
spent.
Ask Me Anything, you know?
Yeah, it's much cheaper. Think about the sets they built at the MGM for his keynote, right?
Yeah. Not just the MGM. They built a whole house, like they dropped a house like in the Wizard of Oz into the parking lot of was that Comdex? It might have been Comdex or
Might have been Comdex.
Yeah.
CES too, but yeah, the smart home of the future. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
I kind of miss Comdex, but that's never coming back, I guess.
No.
That was all about PCs. That was a computer expo as opposed to CES.
Right. Yeah, it was business computing for the by and large, and the first Comdex I went to was it I don't remember the hotel, but I got the key card. It had like IBM OS2 branding on it, and I handed it back and I said, "Do you have a Windows version?"
Yeah, people don't know who never went. That was a bit. You would buy branding anywhere you could, including on the hotel key cards.
Yep.
And every morning there'd be a stack of crap this high outside your
Stuffed
door.
under your door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paper.
Yeah.
I used to come home from Comdex, or maybe early, but it's Comdex certainly, with what basically amounted to a foot-high pile of paper, which must have
brought
weighed
a separate
50
bag.
pounds.
And
You'd bring a bag. That's right.
Yeah.
well, that's what beat me out of wanting swag, was doing those shows. Like, eventually, it's like, I don't need any more stuff.
How many rubber squeeze toys do you really need? I'm not that
you-
stressed out, honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People hand you even nice things. Like you go to Microsoft shows, they have really nice backpacks or whatever, and it's like, yep, I'm good.
No, exactly.
Not enough stuff.
I have plenty of swag. Thank you.
I'm old, I have enough stuff.
Give me some news. Give me something I can write about.
Well, and I got a spouse that would purge all the logo wear, and then you'd see, all the folks on the street corners panhandling for money.
Good for her. She doesn't. I don't like wearing.
Shirt.
I don't want to wear ads on my clothing. I think
I'm
she's right
really
on.
logoed.
Yeah.
This is a million years ago. Oh, hello.
You can have an ad on your mug. That's different.
2001, I went out to Israel and I did some work. I was working at this company for a week and I come into the office every day and blah, blah, blah. And the last day I was there, I walked in, I was just wearing like a normal, like kind of polo, whatever. And I walk into the meeting room and everyone goes, "Oh, come on." And I'm like, "What's going on?" And they were like, "We all had a bet on what Microsoft logo would be on your shirt today." And I was just wearing a plain shirt. And I'm like, "Yeah, I ran out. I'm sorry."
This is such a problem that FedEx has a booth at all of these shows where you can bring the crap that you would otherwise have to carry back on the plane and give it to them, and they'll FedEx it to your
that's
house.
right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They make money off of that.
I've used that. Yeah.
Sure.
Now, when it comes to logo wear, it's like, bring your own logo, right?
I like it.
Exactly.
I will, world's best boss. I'm telling you. Every single time.
Logo.
All right. So I thought I'd give you, now I know why there is no note in here about the great stuff at CES.
There was no great stuff.
There was no
at CES.
great. There was a lot of things to test your urine, and that's about
fantastic.
But there was news. Now, Richard, before we go much farther, now that you are officially, and I got to get my pen and paper, a host on this show, I need to know a few things. Like what do you use as a phone? What's your
Pixel 6.
Pixel 6?
Yep.
Android makes sense for a Windows guy. All right.
And I like bare metal too, right? Like
me too.
I don't want all the add-ons in, and I tend to buy them away from the carrier just so I don't get all the carrier crap as well.
Yeah. And by the way, I just should mention that I am writing all of this down on my Newton message pad.
Do you have the connectivity? You can use a phone line to dial in.
No.
And, hit the BBS.
It's just a piece of paper. What is your daily driver laptop, if you have one?
Surface Book 2, which is getting long in the tooth.
I was going to say Surface Book 2 has got to be.
Yeah.
That might be 8th gen.
Is
actually.
it an Alcantara lined Surface Book?
It's just the plain old silver one. Although there is a bit of a fuzz growing up on it now. It makes it a little more Alcantara.
Magnesium, as it turns out, is a nice soil for moss.
Okay. Boxers or briefs? No, wait a minute. That's not on the list.
That's a different list.
Emacs or Vim? No, that's not on the list either. VS Code.
VS
I know.
Code.
I know the answer on that one. All right, good. No, I like to know what hardware you use on a day-to-day basis because For instance, I don't use it. I gave it to Stacy, but I really love that Samsung flip phone. I think that's actually
you mean the
not the Fold,
kind of the Z Flip or whatever they call it.
Yeah, they don't call it Z anymore. It's just Flip. But the little one that turns into a normal phone.
It looks like a compact
from a pocket square. Yeah.
And
actually, I think that's a cool form factor. I bought the Duo. Paul and Mary Jo both returned theirs.
I was going to say, and advised you otherwise.
And they told me not to.
I recall being very...
We all returned there
about this.
But now I'm kind of intrigued because the rumor has it, according to Lingerie, writing at this place called Thurrott.com, that they might be doing not a dual screen Duo. The Duo 3 might be a flip phone. Or
can I just say, I don't get to do this a lot, and I'm not usually this bitter about this kind of thing, but I just want to say for everyone to hear, I told you so. Because it is very clear that a dual screen device is a holding pattern for a folding screen device. I said that from day one.
See, I didn't think so because I still don't think the folding screens are as good as the regular screens.
Okay,
so I could live with a bezel and a hinge.
Assuming that the folding display works. Let's leave it at that.
Well, that's a big assumption.
Microsoft, but the problem with Microsoft is they can't just, they'll never say that, right? That would undercut sales of the device. They would never say, look, this isn't what we wanted to make. Someday, we're going to have a really sophisticated folding display, but we don't have that yet. So what we're going to do...
In the meantime, will you buy our interim device?
They're not going to say that, right?
The big complaint on the Duo was always that software never handled the dual screen as well as it ought to.
Yeah. Now, Android has been adapted to make that work better, right? That's been an ongoing effort at Google, and Microsoft has worked with them on that. But the problem I have with it isn't that, look, it's nonsense, but... Microsoft came out and said, no, you don't understand. Dual displays are better. It makes it sparkles your creativity. It turns you, if you could write a novel now because you have two. It's like, wait, but hold on a second, guys. There is decades of research that proves that to be incorrect. But whatever. The truth is, we always knew you were heading to a folding display because a folding display is a display. Well, of course, you have to do the screen of the outside thing, right? So it looks like a phone when you're using it that way. You open it up and you have a mini tablet. To me, that's always made more sense. They're finally going in that direction.
Well, they built the Courier in 2009. They had two screens. They just never shipped it.
So
but that was a full size device. That was not a phone. Right?
So it was a different team, right? Remember that was what was that guy's name?
Jay Allard.
Jay Allard. Yeah, different era, different group, different Microsoft.
Ahead of its time, by far.
Yeah. So, a couple, 4 whatever years ago, they previewed Surface Duo and Surface Neo. Surface Neo was going to be a big screen Windows device, a Windows 10X device, right? Windows 10X was canceled, never came out. I'm starting to think that we're going to start seeing more Android stuff from Microsoft, and that these things will make sense in the Surface ecosystem, and that I don't see any reason why they couldn't have a phone, a folding display device, Surface Duo 3, whatever, and then a Neo type device, which is just a big tablet you connect it to a keyboard and a mouse or whatever, and it turns into a Microsoft 365 machine. And so we'll see what happens, but I really feel like Android has a good future, and Microsoft, I think this fits in nicely with their whole...
Gosh, it's a shame Windows Phone didn't make it. It just kills me.
But this is kind of, plan B, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's plan B.
The thing I really like about it, and this is maybe going to surprise a few people, is that Microsoft is now applying more Windows 11 style UIs to the Surface Duo today, right? So we've seen this over various updates where the Settings app on Surface Duo looks like the Settings app in Windows 11. It's got the same style, same fonts, same icons, that kind of thing. And that gives you that kind of visual consistency. Not that Windows 11 is super consistent, but between devices and between platforms, right? So if you use a Windows 11 computer with potentially a Microsoft phone, a Duo 3, a Neo-style tablet, which I'm making up right now, but if those things exist, they can all be kind of visually and functionally consistent. And I think that's what will help them succeed potentially. I think it's a good idea.
Well, we'll see. Samsung's event
any of those things.
Samsung's event is coming up February 1st. They're going to announce the new Galaxy S23 and a Galaxy Book. One of the things, though, that Samsung's been talking a lot about is this kind of continuity thing, right? Where you have Samsung device, like Apple has already, because they make it all.
Yes.
Samsung saying, well, if you buy all Samsung, we're going to do this. And I think it's interesting that your phone, or whatever Microsoft calls it these days,
works best on
Samsung.
Well, so that came out of an era where Microsoft didn't have their own Android stuff, and so they needed a partner that would kind of go all in on that. So
you think they're going to go in that direction? They're going to try to do a Microsoft. Apple calls it continuity, a Microsoft continuity feature.
I don't know. Well, what I said was they'll at least be visually consistent. I don't know how long the Samsung-Microsoft partnership lasts. It's possible this could screw up some of their plans, because if it goes long enough, you're going to have a better experience on a Samsung device, which is going to look nothing like a Windows 11 computer. So,
am I misremembering this, though? Didn't Samsung say they were going to do this whole kind of continuity thing with their hardware only? I must have. I wish I'd saved that story.
It sounds like something they would say, because it's something Apple said, and that's what Samsung does.
Yeah, right. Apple did it.
Samsung does.
Let's do it.
They do have the DeX environment, which lets you dock a phone and have that kind of PC-like experience, which, by the way, debuted on Windows Phone, just saying.
It seems like it should come from the platform manufacturer. It should come from Microsoft
I've always said that
first.
Yeah, well, or from Android or Google in that case, right?
Well, if you were buying an all Google, living in an all Google world, but you're not. Well, doesn't it have to? Isn't Windows support primary? Like that's the first thing you have to solve.
Well,
maybe not. Maybe nowadays, no. Maybe
I don't know if you know
matter.
what Satya Nadella's Microsoft looks like, Leo, but
that's right.
The whole notion of Windows only, Windows first went by the wayside. That was in many ways the point of his first major announcement, which was that thing we talked about earlier, the Office on the iPhone, meeting customers where they are. I think Microsoft can address a market, though, of especially commercial customers who want devices they can manage that provide a consistent user experience for users. That who cares what it runs on? It could be Windows on Intel or ARM. It could be Android, right? I mean, what's the difference?
But this Duo. So first of all, I'm glad to see that the Duo is not dead.
Yeah. Right.
Flip phone, okay, fine. I'll take a look at it. I personally think that the smaller form factor is more appealing than the larger form factor. I don't want a phone to turn into a tablet. I want a pocket square to turn into a phone. For me, am I wrong? Is that...
No, well, that's like a personal preference thing. I think both of those makes sense.
Okay.
I would just put it that way.
Okay.
Like, I think different people...
Here's the reason I don't like the Samsung Galaxy Fold. It's big. It's a honking thick brick.
That's a hard thing to...
Because in order to do that fold, you have to have two screens folded together.
That's right.
And the Duo, at least the Duo is slimline. The Duo is not
the appeal of that device to me, as someone now in my mid to late 50s, is you get into the car and you want to use the phone to navigate.
Bigger.
Well, you could use
your
it for
maps,
and you can actually see it, right?
Yeah. Many of us have cars that have maps actually on the display in the car. Of course.
No, that's one, of course. But maybe you're commuting on a bus or a train or something, and you want to read a book, and it's just
it's in your pocket.
I read on a full-size iPad.
Yeah.
My wife reads on her phone. I don't find that comfortable. But if you could open that thing up,
it is the case that these phones have been getting bigger and bigger for that very reason, that people want to use them as their computer.
We are all getting older, and I don't mean that just.
I don't think it's age.
I mean, as a country, as a world,
young people use giant phones because that's their computer. That's their only device.
Yeah, there you go. That's.
There's definitely workloads that I save for my 43-inch display.
Yep.
Yes,
absolutely.
Me too. Do you have the Dell 43? Is that what you have?
I do.
Yeah. 4 HD displays. It's kind of cool.
You could use a folded out Samsung whatever with a keyboard and write in Word, and it would be close to that PC experience. It would be much like the experience of using an iPad with a keyboard, right? So it kind of gives you the best of, if you're talking about people are only using that one device, I mean, that device becomes more valuable for those people too.
Yeah. I'm just not a one device person, not even close.
No, I'm not either. Right? No, I know. What I just described is something I will never do.
But you guys are so far from normal. You're not.
Yeah, we're far from normal.
You're not typical users.
But I also, listen, one of the few smart things I ever wrote when I was at Penton or Windows IT Pro was this notion of, the right tool for the job. And it was based on this notion of trying to use at the time, like a Palm device with a little dock and a stupid little Bluetooth keyboard. And then the little dock shifts a little bit and the thing disconnects and I lost the document. And, it's like, look, it'd be nice to travel with a single device. The reality is I'm 6 feet tall, whatever. I can travel with a thin laptop, a tablet, and a phone. It's not going to kill me. And each of those does something better than the others. And on each of those, I prefer using that to the others for those tasks. And that's fine.
Okay.
That's the way I like to do things.
So what is, this is a rumor about the folding. When would they announce?
But it's Zach Bowden, and he has good sources.
Good. Yeah.
And he also got a quote from Microsoft because he noticed that the stock for the current version of the device, which is now, a year and a half old almost, is starting to disappear. And
as it should.
Microsoft gave him a statement and said, "Yeah, don't worry. Surface Duo remains an important part of the Surface portfolio."
So they confirmed they're going to do it.
And now we have this rumor that things are happening. It might not happen this year, right? Folding displays are tough. For sure.
Well, Google's also rumored to have a folding display imminent.
That's right. Which could have shipped right back in September, but didn't. And, we'll see.
Do you think Samsung will make that folding screen for Microsoft?
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, probably, right? Are there other mass makers of folding displays that we're not aware of?
LG has a folding phone, so I figured they must make their display.
I can tell you it's not going to come out of a Microsoft fab, right? It's someone's making it. So Samsung would be my guess.
I'll be interested.
About that partnership, right?
I kind of miss my little Samsung Flip, the Flip C. I really kind of miss that. That was a nice little form factor. I suspect when the new one comes out, I'll buy it.
Right. But that doesn't happen. See, that's like the late in the year release, right?
They announced the Galaxy now, and normally they used to announce the Note in the fall.
The Note,
now
that's right. But now they do the folding devices.
Yep.
And most of the time when Microsoft did a hardware event, it would be in the fall. It would be the October time frame.
Yeah.
That's roughly when we'd expect a Duo.
Yeah.
Well, yes, probably.
Or do-over.
Yeah. Although, again, depending on...
Pandemic,
it's
all
a different
odds
type
are
of
off,
device.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, historically, that's true.
They do have this shared device mode thing. I guess that's kind of what Samsung was talking about.
Well, this is specifically for workplaces where they have multiple people using the same device.
It's the other way around. Not using multiple devices. It's multiple people using one device.
Yeah, that's. I thought this. I saw this headline. I thought, what is the? Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So like a retailer, you have this shared tablet. You're all walking around IKEA or whatever, and which, by the way, those guys use Surface Pros.
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
No, it makes sense. Apple uses iPhones to sell, right?
Sure.
They walk around with a honking big wireless dongle.
Do you remember what they used to use when they first opened the store?
What?
Windows CE.
Oh my God.
Yeah, back when those stores first opened, those were giant Windows CE devices. Yeah.
Wow.
But you have to think they couldn't wait to get rid of those things. Yeah.
Moving on to 365er.
Yeah. So I got really excited when I saw this headline too from Microsoft. Microsoft announces Microsoft 365 Basic. It's only $20 a year. I thought, here we go. Finally, look at this. It only offers 100 gigs of OneDrive storage, and it doesn't offer the Office apps. Wait, it's just the OneDrive 100 gig storage.
Wait, there's no Office apps?
They just renamed it.
They just renamed it. This is literally
all it is OneDrive?
So previously, Microsoft offered only a single standalone OneDrive paid plan, which was 100 gigabyte, cost $20 a year. The only way to get more storage was to buy Microsoft 365,
which is like $80 a year. That's good. I use that.
Personal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just a rebranding. I thought this was going to be a $20 a year plan that got you the Office apps. I was like, man, this is going to be huge. And no, that's not what it is. No. So
that's why this. God, they just another thing Microsoft does terribly is naming, and that's a terrible thing.
Well, I just happened to. So I wrote the OneDrive chapter for the book months ago, and at that time I kind of researched this, and I was like, wow, there's only one OneDrive paid plan. That's really weird. And it's only 100 gigabytes. Like that's your only. Why don't they? You would think they would offer the ability to buy 1 terabyte, at a time. Like I'm already paying for Microsoft 365, but I needed another terabyte. Yep, here you go, $50 a year, whatever. No, they don't have anything like that.
Have you ever run up against those limits?
No, although I'm getting close. So my personal, I'm on Family, but my account is using. Actually, I can just.
So my experience has
like
been
860.
Yeah, none of those limits are real. What hitting those limits means is nagging.
Oh, that's interesting. So you can go over a terabyte.
and it will just tell you, "Hey, you're over. You should talk to us." And I'm
talk to you about what? I can't pay you more for more.
And that's part of it. So I deliberately kept 100 gig account in a separate part of my
just to see what happened.
Tinnitus.
Yeah.
Ran twice over the limit. It never stopped putting
that's
stuff up there.
interesting.
It just nagged.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Well,
because they don't have a solution.
They don't have a solution.
I think the goal is probably to have one, so they can say, hey, look, you got to start paying for this thing.
And they certainly have the window for abusers. You go through a terabyte into a 100 gig account, it's probably going to yell back at you and do something. But if you're using it in a normal pattern and you go over, all that happens is you start getting nags.
Right.
Microsoft.
They'll be like,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to, if you're using it to host ripped DVD movies, that might be the obvious place to
for
make
piracy or whatever.
Well, and believe me, I have talked to a few folks over the years now that you put anything knowingly illegal,
they scan it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they know faster than you.
Oh, yeah.
And plus,
Google does
depending
the same thing.
And depending on the jurisdiction, as soon as it falls into legal matters, like Microsoft will no longer speak to you.
Yeah. Right. It's interesting because now that Apple is doing end-to-end encryption on iCloud, they can't do that anymore. And I wonder if that's going to...
That won't survive the EU, full stop.
They're not offering it in the EU. And that's or China or Russia or Australia.
Probably not. Well, which also means they probably won't offer it in California.
Well, that's an interesting... They are.
Yeah. They're going to...
I feel like
there's some things.
The other shoe's going to drop at some point. But they can't scan for CSAM. They can't scan for piracy. Right. Because they don't have access to it. And I guess what they can say is, well, you know what? Sorry, we can't get into it. It's private.
Well, this means you're facilitating criminal behavior, and that creates a whole other set of problems.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. Microsoft acquires Fungible, which is by the way, the worst name for a company because it essentially means we're interchangeable with anything else. So
yes,
it's like calling yourself beige. Or, neutral. We're nothing. We're the nothing. Oh, wait a minute. There is a nothing. Never mind. Right. What is Fungible?
So you mentioned, I think you said TPUs, right? That Google is using in the data centers. So this company makes high efficiency, low power data processing units or DPUs. Basically, Microsoft is buying this company to make its own data centers in Azure more
Makes
efficient.
sense.
Rumored $190 million. Not getting quite the scrutiny as Activision Blizzard for some reason. But,
oddly enough, yeah.
So,
no, I think that's a smart move. If you can't build it, buy it.
There you go.
Well, you need $1 billion here or $1 billion there before you're going to get any act.
Oh, no. Look, if they were going to give a chat GPT $10 billion, $190 million for Fungible.
It's just
nothing.
pocket change. Satya Nadella probably wrote a personal check.
Yeah. By the way, a dollar bill is fungible. 190 million of them starts to get something a little special. But,
190 million of them are heavy.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Very heavy.
You could swim in it.
Takes up a lot of space.
I worked at a bank and I knew what $1 million looked like in 10s and 20s.
Oh,
a couple of big blocks of
Is it
cash.
big? Interesting.
Oh, yeah. 2 blocks like this size,
Yeah.
190 million in ones, I would probably more than fill this room, I would imagine.
Let's ask Wolfram Alpha. Meanwhile, while I'm querying, you can tell us about the big Microsoft education event coming up.
You're not going to have enough time. So Microsoft announced they're having a Reimagine education event on January 9th. Now, they usually do have an education event most years. People might remember several years ago, they used that May event to announce the first Surface laptop, which was a bit of a stretch in education because it was so expensive, but that's what they did it. The thing that's interesting about this to me is that they do have some education hardware still, like the Surface Laptop SE and Windows 11 SE, which runs on that, which is education only. Haven't heard a lot about that in recent years. Satya,
and these are not different kinds of hardware, though. This is the normal hardware with a different license on it.
Well, this is, I would call it Chromebook level hardware with a different license on it. Yeah.
All right.
Because it has to compete in that market where these things cost $200 to $250, right? These are really low end devices. But in the past, the people
and they're not ARM, right? They're still Intel.
That's right. Yeah. Which has its own little set of challenges. It's okay because Intel just got rid of the Pentium and what was the other brand? Celeron, thank you, Celeron brands. Yeah. And now those things are called in Atom 2, and they're called Intel processors. So, they're better.
But it's interesting that Satch is going to this.
That's what's interesting. And also Brad Smith. We've never had that kind of high level attention. So we'll see what this amounts to. I don't really know.
And by the way, 190 million $1 bills would weigh 418,878 pounds.
Yikes.
Which is 190 metric tons. Which is half the maximum takeoff mass of a Boeing 747.
Yeah, I was going to say that's
the
like
equivalent of a
boxcar full of bricks or something.
It's the typical mass of a blue whale.
There you go.
Or twice the cargo capacity of a 747-200F. There you go.
So like a shipping container full of lead.
It's a lot of bills.
Yeah.
190,000 kilograms. Yeah.
That makes sense.
For those of you in Canada.
Yeah, that's why you go with 10s and 20s.
I'm sorry, you mean the rest of the world except for one?
Libya and the U.S.
Yes.
Sure. Do you have anything to declare? No, I'm going to carry on. I'd appreciate it if you didn't x-ray my bag.
Thank you, Wolfram Alpha.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along, because we're running out of time here. Let's do and Richard, I don't know how you feel about the Xbox.
I suspect not as violently opposed as Mary Jo was.
Do you game at all, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. But I am definitely part of the PC master race.
Yes,
as
you should be. Yes.
My Xbox is used to run Netflix and Plex.
Okay. What's your game? Did we talk about this already?
I feel
like we did. No.
And somebody mentioned in the chat too, Kerbal Space Program.
Oh, you had the mug. You had the Kerbal mug.
I had the Kerbal mug, and so I find that game therapeutic. I'm not a.
Oh, that's a great game. I think.
Yeah. I think XKC did the graphic on this, but the truth is, all of us, or maybe it was Randall Monroe.
Yeah,
all of us learn more about orbital mechanics from playing Kerbal Space Program than any number of books. I have my O-berth maneuvers nailed because of Kerbal Space.
Isn't that hysterical?
Yeah,
that is a great little. I like simulation programs myself.
Well, and I like the gardening effect, right? I'm effectively gardening a space program. So.
Yeah,
I have a bunch of in the current universe that I'm operating in. There are a bunch of missions that are some years away from completion.
Nice.
And so the fact that I could take a break for an hour and go tend to my garden of
I agree.
Moving time forward,
it's very soothing.
Do a maneuver, maybe complete a landing, that kind of thing, and then put it down again.
Nice.
And go back to work.
There are a number of us in the Club Twit that do Satisfactory or Factorio for the same reason.
Yeah, both great kind of games. Yeah. Well, the weird game that I take breaks on is a game called Hard Space Shipbreaker.
Hard Space Shipbreaker.
So Hard Space is a series of games that were both big galactic wars. This is not that. This is a game where you dismantle a ship. It's very much like a puzzle.
Oh, fun.
But all you're doing is you are physically taking that ship apart. Sometimes it has an active reactor in it. Sometimes it has a heating system in it. Sometimes it has damaged fuel.
Let me ask you a question about this game. At what point do you shoot other soldiers? It seems...
Are there Nazi zombies anywhere in the game?
It seems lacking in a certain area.
Now, I have gotten my award for having accidentally thrown myself into the incinerator 5 times. So you have to be careful about that part. But I got the Fire God Award.
How many times have I heard that?
I throw myself into the incinerator. Again. You're supposed to throw the components in the incinerator, but details. But the same thing, small, it's a puzzle game, right? I have an hour. Yeah. Let's dismantle.
I like that kind of stuff too. Yeah. Newman in our Discord says that is a Game Pass perk, is Hard Space.
Interesting.
So
there's several other Hard Space titles. This is a relatively recent one. Friends of mine were developing it in Vancouver, and I signed on to their beta, and now it's released. And I still find once in a while that's the one I want to do. It's just I'm going to go dismantle a Gecko freighter today.
How fun. Well, in that case, Paul, there is no longer any hostility. We might as well dig deep into our Xbox segment of the week.
I can picture doing I've often considered getting a giant 4K display and just putting a train simulator on there. I wouldn't play it. I would just let it go.
Yeah.
Because I just love trains.
Just let it go. Just build the set and just let it go.
Just let it run.
I kept a version
we're going to go
of
across the continent,
Oh, just for driving and chain.
I used to play
Transport Tycoon back in the day.
Oh, that was a fun game.
Set up train.
By the way,
and all that stuff.
Newman says he is also a Fire Lord, sadly.
I assume you just turn to cinders and they fall down to the ground.
Well,
get blasted by the thing.
Well, the best part is you have the corporate voice saying to you that this you're overheating your suit. This will lead to productivity inefficiencies just before you vaporize.
Right. You're like, no, I got this.
I love it. I think hostile AIs
tool.
should be in every game. Every game.
Yeah, I have a cutting tool called the Stinger, so-called because it stings just before it vaporizes you.
Right.
All right, I'm playing that game. Xbox time, Paul.
Yes. Where are we? So Microsoft this past week filed an amended version of its response to the FTC lawsuit, where it kind of downplayed that whole part where it said the FTC was unconstitutional. Just kidding, guys.
I didn't mean to say that about your mother.
I mean, this is the legal filing version of putting the search pill in the taskbar. Did we not put this by a committee first? I mean, what? It's kind of a weird... It literally, the way they described it was, this is something we were tossing around internally. We didn't mean for it to make it into the final version.
It's called oops.
Yikes.
But this still feels like just political jousting, right?
I hope it is.
Has to make a protest. It's part of a negotiation.
I hope it is. I hope it
feels
is. I hope it is. Yeah.
I think so.
Game Pass for January?
Yeah, so usually for Game Pass, what they do is they announce something for the first half of the month, and then they do another big announce for the second half of the month. And they're going to do this month, but they just announced 3 more games that are coming this month that are just kind of out there by themselves that have nothing to do with that.
That's because it was such a crap months so far, right?
Yeah. This is like an apology for the Xbox.
And this is good. Monster Hunter Rise is a fun game.
Monster Hunter Rise is the big one. Yeah. At least the one I'm familiar or have heard of, I should say.
I've played it. Yeah.
Not that I'll be able to use it. I just switched back to Xbox Live Gold like a peasant. I don't normally cover this kind of thing. In fact, I didn't cover this thing. Laurent wrote about it, but Microsoft did reach out to me, and I just said thank you and left it alone. But Oreo is releasing Xbox branded Oreos, so that on the cookie part there's like an Xbox logo or different buttons on the Xbox controller. And God help us all.
Somebody in Nabisco said,
not moving around enough already. Like what?
Yeah.
Somebody in Nabisco said, I think a lot of gamers eat Oreos.
I think those guys aren't fat enough. I have an idea.
Unlock playfulness.
Yeah. Also,
is this one of the symbols of the apocalypse?
Yep. This isn't the first thing like this to happen. I've been trying to ignore these kinds of things. So,
look, the Oreos have the buttons of your controller
that's
on
what I'm
them.
saying. Yeah, they're right.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
I don't even eat Oreos. I might just.
Where's the crypto Oreo? That's the obvious one.
That's right now. Also, why isn't the Oreo cream green?
It should be Xbox green. It could be minty fresh inside.
Now, I've already spent more time talking about this.
If they were serious.
So,
and you know what I love? It's available in 22 nations.
There you go.
Because
this has better distribution than Surface Duo.
Yes.
Everyone complains Microsoft stuff never comes out international. The Oreos, those are all over the place.
No problem.
Every country of the world. Delicious prizes you could win.
Delicious.
Wait a minute. It says for the first time ever in 22 countries, Europe only. Are there 22 countries in Europe alone?
Oh,
that's bizarre.
That makes it even dumber.
Yeah, I know. It's true. I mean, there are.
Are there 22 Schengen nations?
Yeah, there could be.
What's with the boat?
Yeah, I think it's about right.
That's Sea of Thieves. These are different games. I don't know.
Oh, okay. They're games. All right.
Baked in symbols too.
Am I going to guess? Oh, the cheat codes are in the cookie.
Yes.
Oh,
it's like a fortune cookie.
Oh, it's in the cookie.
Because when I'm eating Oreos, I want paper.
Well, you're eating cardboard, so what's the difference?
Might as well. It's no taste difference. These limited edition cookies will bear the Xbox logo as well as the iconic ABXY controller buttons alongside
cannot
a
legally be
directional
described as food.
arrow. By scanning their QR codes. By scanning the cookies and by cracking exclusive cookie combinations inspired by the cheat codes hidden in games throughout history, fans can unlock a range of prizes.
This is a biz dev guy wanting his
more
promotion.
time on this than we spent on AI, but
I think it's just, that these are QR codes cracks me up.
Yeah, that's legit.
Then look at them. That explains the design, because the design is kind of futuristic. Wow.
Yeah.
On we go. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Okay.
I'm not going to make another joke. It's not good.
Enough jokes. Forza. I like saying
There's a game I'll play.
Yeah.
Yeah, an Xbox Series X bundle with Forza. So it's $559. You get the console, an extra controller, and the game. So it's about $120 worth of extra stuff. That kind of explains the price. The interesting thing about this to me is that we haven't seen an Xbox Series X bundle in a long time because this console has had serious component shortage issues, right? They did a much better job of getting Xbox Series S out into the world, and we have seen some bundles there. So I don't remember what the timing is, but I can't think of the last time there was an Xbox Series X bundle. In fact, I'm kind of wondering if there ever has been one. There must have been, but I don't. These things have been, these things entered the world with component shortages. Remember, this was the deal when they launched. In fact, there was a big question that year whether Sony would launch their console and Microsoft would do theirs. And I felt like this was a little bit of a game of chicken and posturing on their part. So they just both went forward with it. But
I vividly remember a year and a half was trying to get one.
Yep. Oh, right. That's exactly. So anyway,
wasn't I think the last Xbox X that was branded was like the Air Jordan one in 2020 before the pandemic. Remember when they because running shoes in video game.
Don't give me the cookies.
Hey, listen, you know what? That makes more sense than an Oreo. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, yeah, if you guys need to get out of the house,
Stop pushing me.
Plenty of time.
Microsoft is going to reduce the power consumption on both the X and S.
Yeah. This is, I will say another interesting bit to Xbox Series X and S is that with the Xbox One, there were lots of attempts to, remember the big deal then was let's make the dashboard quicker. And the only way they could eventually do it was just to make fewer steps to get you to where you wanted to go to launch a game or whatever, because there was just something inherently inefficient about it. But from a UI perspective, or no, not from a technical perspective, the UI for some reason was just kind of heavy. So one of the big advances with Xbox Series X and S is that the UI is actually really quick. It's really light. And instead, what we're starting to see are these low-level enhancements to make the thing more efficient, to make it run faster, using technology, not UI tricks, right? And so this is kind of the latest in a long series of steps they've been making to make these things more efficient, because these things, even the Xbox Series S, by the way, are like little heat sinks. If you ever read the Wirecutter, what's the best electrical heating unit you could get, like an Xbox actually was the best one. Yeah. They throw off a lot of heat. So it's just another change they're trying to make. Where I'm just going to be opt-in, obviously, but people can or will be able to in the future allow you to have this thing just be more efficient. And it could depending on how they do it, if they do it, might actually be up to 20 times more power efficient than the current most efficient option, which is sleep.
It's funny because that's my most efficient option as well.
There's also just death. So you can just turn it off.
Death is even
completely.
more efficient, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is death equivalent to turning off an Xbox or unplugging it?
It's actually physically unplugging it.
Okay.
Exactly. Because you're not drawing anything.
There was an announcement at CES you didn't mention, which is the new Sony-Honda joint venture, the Afeela automobile, which has a PS5 built in.
Okay.
Now that's how you get the numbers up on the PlayStation.
No, actually, the way you get them up is you sell them. So one of the things, I think this is very interesting. I think this is related to the Xbox Series X bundle story, which is Sony has been very explicit. They said this back in, I think it was August. They were talking about how coming into the holiday season, they said that this component shortage thing is coming to a close. And now at CES, they've come out and said, look, we've now sold 30 million units of the PlayStation 5. The component shortage is over. If you want to buy a PS5 now, you should have no problems doing so. So Microsoft has not said something similar, but they did just, like I said, they did just released a bundle. I spent some time researching how its predecessor, the PS4, sold over time, how the Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One have supposedly sold. We don't really have hard numbers for those things. And then how the Nintendo Switch has sold. And there's a lot of interesting things there, but I would say in the period of time in which the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S have been available, both of those things shipped, what was the first year? I want to say 3 years after the Switch. The Switch has still outsold them by a huge margin. Like, it's actually kind of interesting. I know they're not exactly the same. The Switch is less expensive, it's portable, et cetera, but it's interesting. So it's probable that in the amount of time since, actually, I don't want to say that number. I'm not positive that's true, but the Switch has dramatically outsold the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S since those consoles have been available. I know it's not fair, but anyway, that's good news for them. It's selling at a much slower pace than their predecessors because of the component shortage stuff. That's not really, and we'll see if they can catch up. I mean, they have a long way to go, but it's good.
Nobody's catching the Switch.
No one's catching the Switch. I meant catching up to, I'm sorry, the predecessors. So like the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 both sold north of 80 million units. The PlayStation 4 has sold over 100, yeah, 17 million, somewhere in there. Microsoft has probably sold half that. That's the kind of the rough guess there, but
sure.
Xbox One sold between 50 and 55 million in its lifetime, which is terrible. But that was the whole submarine thing.
But the PS5 and the new generation S and X, I mean, they're in the tens of millions, but they're expensive devices.
Yeah.
And, and the Switch is well north of 100 million. Like, Nintendo hits markets well. They don't sell the most advanced hardware.
Yeah. It's a different kind of device too. They're like the Disney of video gaming, right? You're not like, PS5 or Switch. That's not really where most people are. And a lot of people, I think, buy a Switch in tandem with something else, either the PC gamers or console gamers. And they just want this thing to, bring to work portable on the bus. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. My son just got one for Christmas. He loves it.
Well, because the PlayStation Portable is getting long in the tooth, and the Steam,
fun, basically,
the Steam portable device is still hard to come by, and that's quite.
It's still. Leo knows more about this. In fact, he probably has a stronger.
Yeah, I played with it. I really like the Switch. I think the Steam.
Yeah, I think that's the. Yeah.
If I'm with you, Richard, if you're gonna want to play PC games, play them on a 43-inch display. Don't play them on a Switch-sized device. It's just not a very. Right. I guess if you need a mobile device,
this is the Xbox game streaming problem. You have a game that was designed for consoles, and now you're playing it on your phone. Well, I mean, maybe a kid could read that stuff, but I can't see those little. I'm not going to be able to read anything on that screen.
The Switch is even smaller screen, but the Switch games are designed for the Switch. I love the Switch. I play, most recently I played Portal on the Switch, which is a PC game, but
that's a great puzzle game. And it's just,
it's really enjoyable.
You're only playing it so you can hear that song at the end, aren't you?
Yeah. Still alive. Yeah.
Jonathan
this was a triumph.
This was a triumph. I love that song.
It's the best.
Okay. We are going to the back of the book in just a bit. And by the way, now that we've welcomed Richard as our official host, I think we can count on him every week for a brown liquor recommendation. I hope so.
I'm here for you.
I'm ready. I got my credit card in hand. It's funny. I'm
not bringing up anything you don't know about.
Yeah, I know. But I have to say, I
will have a bourbon pick for you guys someday soon. I got a really nice kind of mainstream bourbon that's just.
I love it.
Spot,
we're moving from beer to the hard stuff. as is appropriate.
Bourbon is what beer wanted to be anyway.
Beer's just a weak substitute.
It's a gateway drug, Leo. Yeah. It's where you start. It's not where you end up.
There is something grown up, I would say, about having a tumbler with just a finger of something, 20-year-old something.
Fingers.
Sure. As you swirl it around and judge the people around you.
It feels more grown up even than a mixed drink. It feels like, you know. So
the point here is you start with wort, and then the question is, do you make good choices or bad choices? Right?
Well, and I am not a drinker at all.
Speaking from experience, there are only bad choices to be made at this point.
Well, my choice is always one at most, because not because I'm a prude, but just because I feel bad the next day.
It's difficult.
It affects my sleep. But one is, once in a while, and I don't even do it more than maybe two times a month. But I'm looking forward to adding to my stock of bourbons, whiskeys, and the like.
I'll go deeper into the repertoire for you, friend.
That would be great.
For me, it's always about stories.
Right? You introduced me to a Budna Abalur, and that is an amazing.
Yeah, but you're not going to drink that every day.
Well, that's the kind of thing. See, that's the thing. Yeah. To me, I'm not a drinker. Right. But it's almost food. I want to taste it. That's a special
occasion. That's a special occasion.
And that's one thing.
You're not going to go have a fancy French meal every day either, but
right.
there are, there are other
to me, wine and
bourbons that are very good,
and whiskeys or bourbons are kind of foods that you taste. You don't drink them to be inebriated. For me, because I regret it.
So many movies and TV shows where someone gets a shot of whiskey or bourbon at a bar and they're like, and they throw it back and like, nobody, no,
that's disgusting.
That's you would kill yourself.
That's just disgusting. No, it's ridiculous.
That's not,
and we know
it's
just
wild.
Possible, it's just room temperature tea.
Yeah. Now, if it's wild turkey, you just want to get it over with.
Yeah, that's what it is. I think, honestly, for me, and that's why you've been such a revelation for me, Richard, because honestly, I thought those brown liquors are so awful. I just wanted to get them over with. But you've taught me otherwise. Anyway, that's coming up.
They're alternatives.
In just a little bit, the back of the book. Hey, everybody, it's Leo Laporte, the founder and host of many of the Twit podcasts. I don't normally talk to you about advertising, but I want to take a moment to do that right now. Our mission statement at Twit, we're dedicated to building a highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts, that's our audience, and you, I guess, since you're listening, by offering them the knowledge they need to understand and use technology in today's world. To do that, we also create partnerships with trusted brands and make important introductions between them and our audience. It's how we finance our podcasts, but it's also, and our audience tells us this all the time, a part of the service we offer. It's a valued bit of information for our audience members. They want to know about great brands like yours. So can we help you by introducing you to our highly qualified audience? And boy, you get a lot with advertising on the Twit podcasts. Partnering with Twit means you're going to get, if I may say so humbly, the gold standard in podcast advertising. And we throw in a lot of valuable services. You get a full service continuity team supporting everything from copywriting to graphic design. I don't think anybody else does this or does this as well as we do. You get ads that are embedded in our content that are unique every time. I read them, our hosts read them. We always over-deliver on impressions. And frankly, we're here to talk about your product. So we really give our listeners a great introduction to what you offer. We've got onboarding services, ad tech with pod sites, that's free for direct clients. We give you a lot of reporting so you know who saw your advertisement. You'll even know how many responded by going to your website. We'll also give you courtesy commercials that you can share across social media and landing pages. We think these are really valuable. People like me and our other hosts talking about your product sincerely and informationally. Those are incredibly valuable. You also get other free goodies, mentions in our weekly newsletter that's sent out to thousands of fans. We give bonus ads to people who buy a significant amount of advertising. You'll get social media promotion too. But let me tell you, we are looking for an advertising partner that's going to be with us long term. Visit twit.tv/advertise. Check out our partner testimonials. Tim Broom, founder of IT Pro TV. They started IT Pro TV in 2013, immediately started advertising with us, and grew that company to a really amazing success. Hundreds of thousands of ongoing customers. They've been on our network for more than 10 years, and they say, and I'll quote Tim, "We would not be where we are today without the Twit network." That's just one example. Mark McCrary, who's the CEO of Authentic, he was actually one of the first people to buy ads on our network. He's been with us for 16 years. He said, and I'm quoting, the feedback from many advertisers over those 16 years across a range of product categories is that if ads and podcasts are going to work for a brand, they're going to work on Twitch shows. I'm proud to say that the ads we do over-deliver. They work really well because they're honest. They have integrity. Our audience trusts us, and we say, this is a great product. They believe it. They listen. Our listeners are highly intelligent. They're heavily engaged. They're tech-savvy. They're dedicated to our network. And that's partly because we only work with high-integrity partners that we have thoroughly and personally vetted. I approve every single advertiser on the network. If you're ready to elevate your brand and you've got a great product, I want you to reach out to us. Advertise at twit.tv. So I want you to break out of the advertising norm, grow your brand with host-read authentic ads on twit.tv. Visit twit.tv/advertise for more details or email us advertise@twit.tv if you're ready to launch your campaign now. Our show today brought to you, as it often is, by those great Club Twit members. I just want to take a moment to thank them. I just sent you, Richard, you're going to get it in your email, a complimentary membership so you can join us in the Discord if you choose. Only if you choose. But it is a really great club for people who are listeners to the shows. Let me just briefly explain the benefits. It's inexpensive, I think, $7 a month. Many podcasts cost more to join their memberships, but we decided we wanted to make it as affordable as we can. $7 a month. Hey, it's even $1 less than a Twitter blue check. But what do you get? You get ad-free versions of all the shows. No ad tracking, nothing. And you'll get a feed for each of the shows, including the shows you can't get otherwise, like Hands on Windows with Mr. Paul Thurrott, Micah's Hands on Macintosh, the Untitled Linux Show. Tomorrow we're doing Stacy's Book Club, Project Hail Mary. That will be streamed live to the club only, and then it will be made available on the Twit Plus feed, which is, again, a club-only special feed for this kind of stuff. The reason we do that is not to keep others out. It's not because we don't want you to hear those shows. In fact, we periodically will put out on our YouTube channels Hands on Windows and Hands on Macintosh, an episode here or there, but because honestly they're too new to have ad support, and so it costs us money to do anything, unfortunately, and so the club members are paying for it. So we feel like it's fair to make the club members make it available to club members. This Week in Space started that way, and as it got bigger and we got it big enough to have ad support, and we then did make it public, and so that's the hope with anything we launch in the club. But that's a nice side benefit, I think. I don't think Stacy's Book Club is ever going to get an ad-supported version, to be honest with you. But it's a lot of fun. So $7 a month, ad-free versions of all the show, the special Twit feed, Twit Plus feed. And I got to say, to me, and I don't think I'm alone, the Discord is a lot of the reason I love the club. Our Club Twit Discord, filled with other Club Twit members. It is, of course, a place you could chat about an ongoing show. We have channels for all of the shows, but we also have channels for any topic you might want to discuss, including brown liquor, I believe, and maybe we'll get you beer, wine, and cocktails. Maybe we'll have to start one that's just brown.
No,
liquor.
that's not the same.
That's not this. Although there's some good stuff there. The Woodford Reserve. That's pretty good stuff. Here's some cocktails. So now you can see people talk about stuff they're interested in. Automobiles, crypto. That's gotten a little slower lately. Fitness, tech. Yes, there are some of us who actually work out. And on and on and on. There's that Acer desk that is what is it? It's what do you call it? A bike. That's the word I was looking for.
It's a bike desk.
You pedal to
power. It powers the ports.
Isn't that great?
So you can power your computer. You can power your devices.
Yeah. Anyway, go to twit.tv/clubtwit. Join the fun. It really is a great group. I just learned 6,000 strong now, which is wonderful, which makes me so happy. And I'd love to see you in there too. Twit.tv/clubtwit. Thank you in advance. One of the segments of the show that the Club Twit members support, because no advertiser will go near it, our back of the book. And ladies and gentlemen, we begin the back of the book with Paul Thurrott and his tip of the week. Hello, Paul.
Never say never. This came up early in the show somehow, but when you want to install something like, well, if you want to install literally a Windows subsystem for Linux or Windows subsystem for Android, one of the prerequisites is virtual machine platform. So if you're running Windows 11 on supported hardware, this will work. You may not have the virtualization features in your BIOS set up correctly, but you should see that Windows features control panel, right? Because I was writing about this, and I've been writing about both the Linux and Android subsystems lately, and I've been installing these things on multiple computers. Suffice to say, the Linux one is a lot more complicated, even though it's in the store now, but okay, whatever. It is, what I found is that for some reason on multiple machines, the installer for the Windows subsystem for Android is supposed to install a virtual machine platform in the background, but it gets stuck on it for some reason. So my advice is, and the tip is, if you're going to install these things, install that manually first. You'll have to reboot the computer. But then when you go to install those other two things, A, it's already installed, but B, you don't have to reboot anymore, right? So you can install both of those things from the store. And in the case of the Windows subsystem for Android, you just launch the store, you install the apps you want, you go, you're done. And so it's just it's kind of a reliability issue, I guess I'll call it. I just found that the best results were to do it in that order. And on that note, I should mention, because I just published a very short post about this. I keep forgetting to do this, but I've been updating, the Windows 11 field guide as we go. So the book today is 655 pages long in PDF form, over 100,000 words, I'll call it. I added 12 new chapters recently. I have many more to go. It's like I said, I think it's going to close. It's going to be pretty close to 1,000 pages, I think, when it's done. But it's only $9.99, so you can find that on LeanPub, and that would be a great way to support me if you.
Yay! Want. Yeah, you got to remember to plug this because
I know I'm terrible. I'm not very good at this.
I know I'm bad at marketing as well, but the book is great, and you get to set your own price, and and you get the Windows 10 field guide at the same time.
Right. Although eventually that won't be necessary because that content will all be updated. And,
by then you'll be doing the Windows 12 field guide. So.
Yeah, that's the hope, isn't it? I just get on the treadmill and never
to me,
stop.
It would be the fear. But okay.
Yeah, the Acer bike, and I'll just keep going and going.
App pick of the week.
Yeah, I'd like Richard to talk about this one a little bit too, because both of us, I think this past week, have switched over to Bitwarden as our password manager.
Bravo! Yes, that's my favorite, and I should mention a sponsor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't do it for that reason.
No, I know. Paul, you know what? Steve Gibson, same thing. He looked at all the password managers, decided to go with Bitwarden.
I think routinely, the Wirecutter did the same thing. Basically, there are two choices that emerge. It's 1Password and Bitwarden. There are a number of things that I think put Bitwarden over the top. I think it being open source is a big part of it.
I agree.
Yep. You can host it yourself if you want to do that. It's free if you don't want to pay for it.
Well, it's not hard to host yourself. There's a Docker. What's interesting is that there are, because it's open source, there's the official Bitwarden server, but there's a very nice Rust server.
Yeah.
I think it's called VaultWarden, that is in a Docker container that's actually fairly easy to host yourself. Or, you don't even have to host it really. I guess you could just sync it and then have it everywhere.
The big appeal to me of this kind of a thing is that it works everywhere. And by everywhere, what I mean is desktop or mobile, right? That you can use it as an autofill source or the autofill source if you have Android on your phone or your tablet. And this does do that, right? So it works on both platforms. Although for some reason today I haven't gotten it to work yet. It will work, but on my iPhone, but it works fine on my Android.
Oh, I use it on
device.
the iPhone all the time. It's great.
Yeah, no, I know it works. It's just probably me, but anyway.
I use it on Linux too. There's a command line version if you really love.
Yep. It does all the passwordy things, generates hard passwords.
It's fantastic. I just recently, because of Steve, one of the things we learned, and Steve had the scoop yesterday on Security Now, is that many LastPass users had the hash function, the PBKDF2 iteration, set to 1. which
really
Steve said that's in
easier.
effect saying LastPass saying, yeah, you don't need a master password. Just just give us the data and we'll whatever.
Yeah.
It's easily brute forced, and while LastPass's default today is 100,100 iterations. It used to be one, then it was 500. But as GPUs have gotten faster, that's not as good. I set my Bitwarden to 2 million, which is considered these days. Even OWASP says, only 300,000 iterations are necessary. But I set it to 2 million. And what was interesting, because it's open source, Steve got a message from us, a guy who said, let's do memory hardened hashes. Let's use scrypt instead. And he has issued a pull request, and it hasn't yet been approved by Bitwarden. But at some point, because it's open source, Bitwarden could fold this into the code to use scrypt, which would be much, much better than PBKDF2. So that's where you get the advantage of open source. I also, when I did that, I updated my master password to be insane, and I rekeyed the vault, which you can easily do. And that really, I feel much safer using Bitwarden. I think you're doing exactly the right thing. And again, they're a sponsor, but none of us are saying that because of it.
And I started the migration after our show last week.
Yeah. Oh, I did it 2 years ago. And about 18 months ago deleted my LastPass vault. And I'm just crossing my fingers that the backup that was stolen wasn't that old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's just terrible.
Yeah.
Just
well, and the main
terrible.
thing is changing the passwords in the meantime.
Eventually I have to go through all of my passwords.
Well, and I had to go talk to the spouse about this because she was using it as well. And said,
that's the big problem.
You've seen these problems.
Yeah.
I think Bitwarden's a better choice. And she's like, okay, let's go. And that surprised me, honestly.
It's not hard to make the move. The export from LastPass is easy. The import to Bitwarden is seamless. Honestly, it does the same thing. So once you get used to a different icon, maybe a little bit different look, it's the same as LastPass. I think it works a little better than LastPass. And it really,
I'm pretty happy with it.
Good.
I had to get my FIDO keys all set up. That was I talked to a couple of friends who are using it as well, the same way that are also moving from LastPass. Said, set up the account, set up the FIDO keys, then do the import.
That's
good advice. Yeah, that makes sense.
This kind of goes without saying. 2FA, obviously. I mean, this is what Richard is already saying. But for anyone who's considering this or any password manager, my God, please 2FA.
Although, as Steve pointed out, if you're in the case of LastPass, if somebody's got your vault, they don't need the 2FA.
No, but that's because
to brute force it.
Right, but that won't be the case with Bitwarden.
I have my YubiKey in my hand. This is the only way I can unlock my Bitwarden vault. I think that's the right way, absolutely, to do that. Good recommendation. Bitwarden.com. It's free. I taught when they came on as a sponsor. I said, one of the problems with LastPass, the first thing. And this was after LastPass had stopped sponsoring our shows. And by the way, I was very grateful to LastPass. They saved us in the pandemic with a studio sponsorship.
Yeah.
It's been since then that things have seemed to have gone downhill.
They got sold.
They got sold twice. That's exactly. And now they're spun off into a standalone. And clearly what happened is the equity capital company that bought them was interested more in profits than in security. And when that happens,
a weird purchase then.
Well, we've seen it happen so many times. You load up on debt to buy a company, and now you've got to pay off that debt and start making money. And how do you do that? Well, you chop stuff. But with the security company, that's a recipe for disaster.
Well, you got to know they let some key person go. That
obviously,
was maintaining
perimeter. Yeah, somebody was really knew what they were doing. Yeah, the UI looks better and better all the time. They're spending the money on a better LastPass UI
and shiny,
making it shiny. But boy, under the hood, it is not good. In any event, what was I? I was going to say something else, but anyway, I've said enough. Yes, Bitwarden. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Free Forever. I talked to the Bitwarden principals when they started advertising. I said, what about this Free Forever? Because LastPass pulled the rug out from its Free Forever users. He said, because we're open source, we cannot and would not. That is not our profit model at any time. We will always have a free open source version.
Nice.
And that's the beauty of open source. Let's say Bitwarden went, belly up, or we didn't like them, or, some equity capital company bought them. It's open source. You fork it, you move on. You're not dependent on the company, and I think that is why it's so important that it's open source.
I mean, that being said, I signed up for families immediately.
Oh, me too.
On multiple accounts.
Yeah, no, me too. I pay the $10 a year premium.
Yeah, this is not expensive. I mean, like,
it's cheap.
Premium
this is silly money.
A year.
Yeah.
I spent more money on YubiKeys.
I did it because I wanted to support them, not because I needed it.
That's the thing. Like, it doesn't cost a lot if you want to pay for it.
No, but you don't have to, and I think for some people that might be an issue. So,
for sure.
Good news. It's free forever. How about an enterprise pick of the week?
Just one, just a little one. This is actually this week's Run As Radio. I had Jeremy Moskowitz on, and we were talking about the Windows Local Administrator Password Solution. And the story, it's called Lapse, right? The story of this is great because there used to be a group of folks inside of Microsoft called the Premier Field Engineers. So if you were a customer of certain size of Microsoft and you signed up for the Premier program, you basically got access to these Microsoft employees that were field engineers, and they would go on site and so forth. And they were a phenomenal source of guests for Run As, because these were the folks that had fought the fight out in the fields, right? Like if somebody's saying, I'm not sure about Active Directory coping with my 20,000 users, I got the guy who had 200,000 people running an Active Directory and how he kept that going. So, and they may write code every so often. And that's what this project actually was the issue of administrator passwords on workstations. So you don't want to give that to the user. Then they start installing software and create other problems, including operating at an elevated level. So when they click on the wrong link, and it's inevitable they will, now there's admin privileges available to the machine and all heck breaks loose. So you only give them a domain user account, and now you have local admin for each machine as necessary. And if you don't have a password management solution for that problem, they're all the same, and that creates more vulnerabilities. And so Lapse was really a kind of tool, a password manager, specifically for managing all of those passwords, changing them automatically, being able to fetch them in a secure way based on your privileges as an administrator, so that you can elevate to take control, to have admin privileges on that machine just as long as you need to. And then as you leave, changes the password. Great little tool. If the problem is that the PFEs largely have been dismantled, Microsoft's advocacy programs and so forth have changed all of that, but the code lives on, and it's just gotten a major version. So that's why we did a show. It's been around for quite a few years, but yeah, there's a new build of it coming that specifically adds support for Azure Active Directory.
So just to be clear, this was made within Microsoft for this audience, or was this made by their customers?
No, this is the Premier Field Engineers made it to deal with problems they were having with customers. Yeah. Yep. Okay. And then they make it available. And there's a bunch of products like this that you've run across over the years where you're like, where did this come from? Probably PFEs.
Do you think it's done in PowerShell, or is this fancier?
No, this was written a little more low level than that, actually.
Oh, interesting.
There are some PowerShell stuff that came from the PFEs, but this because it needs pretty deep access into Windows to deal with all of those things. And it's older than that. I mean, it's been around a long time.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this major update finally to take it to be friendlier with Azure and to work with the different configurations of Azure Active Directory to on-prem Active Directory, it needed to be done.
You'll enjoy this.
It has been.
Steve on Security Now last week asked somebody to write a tool, because there is a bunch of XML data in your LastPass vault to understand more about your LastPass vault, and somebody asked ChatGPT to write it in PowerShell, and took the code that was actually decent, updated it, and Steve's offering it on his website as a downloadable PowerShell tool to look at your password, your LastPass password vault, to see what's, for instance, what's your PBKDF2 iterations and things like that.
And rather than call it V2, which would be the logical thing for Microsoft to do, I mean, obviously.
Oh, it's not called V2?
Oh, no. Now the new one's called Windows Lapse, and the previous one is called the Legacy Microsoft Lapse.
Okay.
At least it's not like 2023 R2,
Yeah.
That's
Community Edition Preview 4.
Richard, give us some booze, baby.
I'd be neglected if I didn't lead off with Angel's Envy for obvious reasons. I mean, it's a fan favorite already, and the story again is lovely. It is now considered a bourbon, although 10 years ago when it was originally released, it just had its 10th anniversary. It wasn't, because it violated the FDA rules.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, the FDA rules for bourbon are about a certain amount of corn, not distilling too high, not barreling too high, aging in charred new oak. It used to be barrels. Now they call it containers.
Right.
And Angel's Envy is all those things, but then they also finish with port casks. Now this
That's
is a
what gives
Scottish
it that taste.
whiskey trick.
Yeah.
And also a lot of color. You know,
Yeah, it's pretty. That's why it comes in a clear bottle. Yeah.
Does it sort of takes the bite out of it?
Yeah, because it is a rye whiskey. It is very much that traditional mash bill of corn, rye, and barley. But the from the cellars of Lincoln Henderson. So Lincoln Henderson is a legendary distiller, most famously, I think, known for creating Woodford Reserve. And he retired. His son had been tinkering with the idea of making port caskings. And then it was his grandson, actually, that pushed they were all in the bourbon business, to push to create a new distillery. They actually built it in the city of Louisville, like rather than being out in the country. They built this distillery downtown, and Lincoln came out to tweak and tune this thing. There's a great story about the cork on this bottle. All the corks from day one had the date of the initial release, which was supposed to be October 10th, except it wasn't ready in time. Lincoln wasn't happy with it. He delayed it a couple of months, and they'd already stamped the corks, so they just stayed with that. And they've stayed with it ever since, because the message was, we'll only release it when it's ready.
Wow. That's great. That's great.
So
I note now they have a variety. They have a rum cask version, and they have some cask strength. Have you tried the cask strength?
I have. I've gotten them as gifts. I've had the rye whiskey, which is a higher rye amount. I mean, one of the things that's happened, I think, to the bourbon industry in general with this tinkering of the FDA rules, where everything is aged in char new oak containers, but it can be finished in other things. So now, and I think
it's silly that the government would weigh in on this. Clearly, it's the bourbon distillers who, the industry told the FDA what they wanted.
Yeah, Big Bourbon pushed on
Big
this.
Bourbon.
I think Lincoln being involved and Angel's Envy being very successful. I mean, a very popular, reasonably priced.
It's very drinkable. It's very delicious. They have some cocktails on their website. I wouldn't make a cocktail out of it. I'd sip it. It's a good sipping whiskey. Yeah.
It's priced correctly for a mixing whiskey. Sure. It's not particularly expensive.
Sure.
It's just a waste of awfully nice whiskey.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that's what they made Jack Daniels for. That's fine.
That's what they make. That's what they make.
That's what they make crap for.
There's stuff in your cupboard you wanted to get rid of with a cocktail. Use that. But my usual mixing bourbon is Makers. Which there are also days where I just want to drink Makers with a ice cube. Angel's Envy generally with an ice cube or without, and not much.
They also have a very nice bottle. I don't know if it's a better whiskey.
Yeah, those are really
finished
pretty.
in Japanese Mizunara.
Now that's their
oak.
new release. So they managed to land a handful of these Japanese casks, and that's a $300 bottle of whiskey.
Is it $300 better?
You know, it's got a style to it, and that's not necessarily my favorite style, but it is very intentional, and I appreciate that. I feel that way about Japanese whiskeys in general.
Yeah.
And one of the aspects is this particular
is it smokier? Kind of, what is the?
No, not at all. It's got a particular. In the end, all of these alcohols, coming in at 70 to 80%, they're solvents. All of that color came from the wood.
Right.
So you're tasting Japanese oak because for some reason we like that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to start going down the Japanese whiskey path at some point and discuss that.
I would love to hear about that.
We'll get there.
Yes.
It's a fascinating offshoot.
Let's not rush him. There are many, many more shows ahead.
Much time.
Now that Richard is a regular, I'm so excited.
Yeah, my current notes are, I think we're going to go look at some more unusual Scottish bottlings before we get on there.
Yeah.
And maybe at some point you can tell us your brand of whiskey suitcase for exporting.
for transcoding substantial numbers.
Of the week.
The whiskey suitcase of the week. Richard Campbell, welcome. The host of Run As Radio, which has always been a fantastic podcast about Windows for the enterprise and for from the point of view of the DevOps guy and the sysadmin. .NET Rocks, of course, says what it's about in the title. Another great podcast. We loved having you on the Alaska cruise. I think a lot of people met you there, and that was so much fun. And now I am thrilled to welcome Richard to our microphones as a Twit regular with Paul Thurrott on Windows Weekly. It's going to be a lot of fun, as you can tell. It's going to be a lot of fun doing this. Thank you, Richard, for giving into the pressure.
You and, our Alcohol Anonymous group later in the year.
I suppose we should say, I don't know, please drink responsibly, and if you don't have to, don't drink at all. But that's why I kind of want to emphasize I'm not a big drinker.
Take days off.
Yeah, I don't. I actually really don't enjoy drinking. I said it's a food for me, and that's why I'm interested in the taste.
That
drink
is
a small
a way
amount
to enjoy it. That's good.
Yeah. I think you're better off if you treat it that way, and don't drive after you drink, please. Whatever you do, even if you just have one finger, stay off the road for an hour or two. We won't have to say that every time. Maybe I'll just print a disclaimer that we can put
really kind of a downer of an ending there, lady.
I don't want people to think like we're promoting.
To show you this picture of a car crash.
Of course, we've always promoted drinking, haven't we? So I guess this is no different.
Yeah, alcohol, don't die.
Don't die. Yeah. Thank you, Richard Campbell. Of course, Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. That is a great place to read all about this and much more. He's also got his First Ring Daily podcast that he does with Brad Sams is there. Become a premium member. I am. It's well worth it. Lots of great content under the premium brand. And pick up a copy of the Field Guide to Windows 11, now available at leanpub.com. Paul won't plug it, so I'll have to.
This is a muscle I need to exercise.
No.
It's not very good.
No, we love you for not caring. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we do Windows Weekly every Wednesday if Leo gets here on time at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. I mentioned the recording time because you can watch us do it live. If you're in a real hurry to get the content, go to live.twit.tv. There's a live stream there all day, all night. And of this show on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. You can watch or listen. We've got both kinds of streams. If you're watching or listening live, chat live in our IRC. Our Internet Relay chat room is irc.twit.tv. All are welcome. Club Twit members have their own special place where you get a little pour, a soft chair to sit in, and that is in our Club Twit Discord. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available ad-supported at twit.tv/WW. We also have a YouTube channel dedicated to the show. If you go to youtube.com/twit, you'll see all the show's links. I can't remember what it is. I think it's youtube.com/Windows Weekly Show or something like that. Anyway, you can find it.
It's just Windows Weekly.
It's just Windows Weekly. Is there a dash?
Nope. I don't believe
it's weird. YouTube is strange that way. In fact, now I think probably
Windows Weekly, one word.
One word. You can probably do at Windows Weekly too now on YouTube.
You're right, because they changed.
Yeah.
I haven't tried that, but yeah.
That's honestly, it's not my favorite way to watch, but it's a good way if you want to share a clip because YouTube makes that really easy to do. My favorite way to watch is just subscribe, whether you subscribe to the audio or the video. That way you'll get it as soon as we're done fixing it up, polishing it up. We're putting on the theme song and all that. We'll put it out on the feeds. And if you subscribe, you'll get it instantly as soon as it's available, thanks to our sponsor, cashfly.com. That concludes this exciting edition of Windows Weekly. Welcome, Richard. And we will be back next week with more. See you then, everybody. Bye-bye.
The world is changing rapidly. So rapidly, in fact, that it's hard to keep up. That's why Micah Sargent and I, Jason Howell, talk with the people making and breaking the tech news on Tech News Weekly every Thursday. They know these stories better than anyone, so why not get them to talk about it in their own words? Subscribe to Tech News Weekly, and you won't miss a beat every Thursday at twit.tv.